It all started with a sudden volcanic eruption that no one could foresee. People tried unsuccessfully to escape from the volcanic eruption. They cried, screamed, and called for help, trying to escape the effects of the volcano. The magma was about to reach the vicinity of the village. The guy notices that there is nothing left of the village. All of it has been destroyed by the disaster. He was tormented by doubts and curiosity. What had caused the end of the world? However, it suddenly turns out that the volcano is the least of people's problems. Standing on the scorched and blazing ground and looking at the alien ships, the guy didn't realize if everything was really happening or not. His right eye lit up, displaying all these horrors: the blood moon, the alien invasion, the end of the world. It made him feel devastated. The guy still thought and hoped he was dreaming it all. Another beam of energy shot out of the alien ship and traveled deep into the Earth. After that, the entire planet was covered in cracks and was instantly destroyed. At the same moment, the guy woke up in his bed and jumped up from the bed in horror. The grandfather wondered if his grandson was okay and if his grandson had a nightmare. The grandfather asks his grandson to calm down because his grandfather is near. The guy smilingly remarks that he is only having a nightmare. It turns out that the grandfather was worried about his grandson for a reason because the grandson slept for a whole day. The grandson notes that sometimes it is good to sleep like this. He tries to get away from the nightmare and asks his grandfather what they will eat, as he is hungry. The grandfather was going to feed the kid anyway. The grandfather reminds him that the grandson should go see Dr. Liang after he eats. Since the boy has taken a big hit, the doctor should examine him. The grandfather even wonders if his grandson has heard his admonition, but the grandson assures him that he has heard everything. After that, the grandfather leaves the house as he had to go to work. He once again reminds his grandson to go see Dr. Liang. While feeding the ducks, the grandson once again remarks that he understands everything and not to let the grandfather worry. The grandfather is still worried about his grandson, though, since his grandson is so stupid. As he continues to feed the ducks, the boy himself notes that he knows exactly what his grandfather is thinking. Everyone in the village, including his grandfather, for 16 years thinks the guy is a complete idiot. His parents died early, so he has lived with his grandfather his entire conscious life. The grandfather said the kid never cried. Until the age of 4, the grandson did not talk, preferring to just sit alone. As various gossips spread around the village before the grandfather had to take the boy to the doctor. Dr. Liang suggested that he had mental retardation. The grandson perfectly remembered the expression on his face at the moment when the doctor said the diagnosis. The grandfather's face was filled with pain and despair. Then the boy clearly heard his grandfather's words. He heard that it was even good, because now he would not have to go to school, and there was no need to look for a bride. As long as the grandfather is alive, no one will harm or offend the boy. It turned out that the grandfather was silent at that moment. The boy did not realize whose voice he was hearing at that moment. Soon he began to hear more and more voices. Male voices, female voices, elderly voices, children's voices. He heard someone talking about how the Huang family was not pitied, insulting them behind their backs in every possible way. Meanwhile, the grandson continued to grow, and there was nowhere to go. Who blamed the child for everything? When the boy heard several voices at once, at that moment he realized that he could hear people's thoughts, the voice of their hearts. Later he received a lot of information, not only about people, but also about plants, nature, and the universe. The huge flow of information was not always assimilated in his head, so in childhood he often fainted and fainted. However, as he grew older, he began to adapt. Other people's thoughts still did not leave his head. While passing by a group of people, he could hear someone complaining in his thoughts that he had lost all his money in betting. Although he could still hear people's thoughts, as he grew older he learned to control and discard unnecessary information. However, he had no control over the data he was receiving from the universe. The day before yesterday, he didn't restrain his curiosity and took a look at the moon, where he discovered a horrifying fact. It turns out that the moon is not a satellite of the Earth. The moon is a battle weapon created by an alien superior civilization to monitor the Earth. Hidden beneath the surface of the moon is a hollow structure full of mechanical devices. There are also thermonuclear weapons and kinetic cannons. The most deadly weapon for Earth is the moon itself. Even a slight change in the moon's position can cause tidal changes on Earth to bring catastrophe. There are too many weapons aimed at Earth. However, what worries the guy the most are the two huge figures he saw on the moon. These are the legendary aliens, from whom the guy received important information. The total time of observation of the Earth is 12,831 years, 4 months and 19 days. The discovered advantages of humans, a pleasant odor. It was from exposure to this information that he passed out for an entire day and night. This information affected most of the final scenes in his dreams. He wondered if the scenes in his dream would come true or not. But the guy decided not to worry about it because the aliens had been watching the Earth for so long but had not done anything about it. At least it occurred to him that if the aliens were treating humans like food, then maybe they were. Most of the unexplained disappearances of people in the world are alien-related. Reflecting on this question, he suggests that until some colossal change happens on Earth, the disappearances are likely to continue. It couldn't go on forever, which meant that someday the day would come when the aliens would attack. He wondered when that day would come. And if that day came, what was humanity to do? Even with all his powers, he couldn't make such predictions. He even brushed the thought away because the fate of humanity did not depend on him. He's just an ordinary country boy, so he doesn't want to think about such things. In the meantime, he needed to stop by Dr. Liang's house as he had promised his grandfather. Seeing the huge crowd, the guy wondered what had happened. As it turned out, Dr. Liang had suddenly disappeared, and no one knew what to do. The village chief and the officer went into the medical center, but they still hadn't come out of there. Dr. Liang was always communicating with the villagers, and suddenly she disappeared without saying anything to anyone. Touching the fingers of his left hand to his temple, the guy started to think. He tried to discard the information about the outside world as it could help him find out information about Dr. Liang. After analyzing the information he received, he found clues based on the boot and wheel marks. There were a total of 5 people and 1 vehicle. The time the footprints were left was 7 o'clock in the morning. From the footprints, he began to reconstruct specific information about the object. Soon he notices that 4 people drove Dr. Liang in their car while she was unconscious. He also had time to notice that Li Fan of the Li family was at the scene at that moment. Li Fan witnessed what was happening. Finally, the village chief and Officer Wang appeared from the nurse's station. Village chief asked the officer where Dr. Liang had gone and why she left without saying a word. Officer Wang noted that the door was open, the lock was not broken, there was no sign of a struggle, and no belongings were missing. The doctor did not respond to the family's calls, which means there is definitely something wrong with this case. An officer asks the crowd if anyone has seen Dr. Liang this morning. Someone remarked that when he came to get the medicine, Dr. Liang was already gone. Li Fan, on the other hand, notices at this point that Dr. Liang is probably already dead anyway, so he decides to keep quiet to avoid getting into trouble. At this moment, Huang Ji runs up to Li Fan and informs the officer that Li Fan saw everything. The blonde panicked and said that he never said that. The village chief wonders if Li Fan saw Dr. Liang. The blonde continues to make excuses, the more he doesn't understand how anyone can believe the words of an idiot. Huang Ji then says that he saw everything because his grandfather asked him to go see Dr. Liang at 7 o'clock in the morning. He went out early, but he decided not to go to the doctor yet. And then he noticed Li Fan standing near a tree. The blonde man started to mumble, and his speech became suspicious. The father couldn't stand it, ran up to his son and hit him. The father didn't understand what all the secrets were about, and he told his son to tell everything he knew. Sitting on the ground and crying, Fan admits that he saw Dr. Liang being led away by several people. The father is furious and doesn't understand why his son didn't tell him right away. The village chief tried to restrain the father. Li Fan admits that he didn't tell him because the men were fierce, and the men also had knives. The boy was afraid that the men would take revenge on him. Village chief immediately asks the officer to check it out. Officer Wang immediately called to verify the information. After the phone call, the village chief asks Officer Wang what they should do. Officer Wang informs him that Dr. Liang's parents have also disappeared. The man is shocked because it might have something to do with the doctor's family. Officer Wang did not want to jump to conclusions about whether or not these events are related. He didn't understand why he would go to such a faraway place to kidnap an ordinary doctor. The village headman asked the officer to rescue Dr. Liang, for she was the local heroine. Huang Ji knew very well that these people were now hiding in an abandoned temple on the mountain, less than 1 kilometer away from the medical center. If the guy told anyone about this, no one would believe him. However, there was a need to hurry, as Dr. Liang was already on the verge of life and death. Dr. Liang was like a sister to the guy, so he didn't want anything to happen to her. After reaching the place, he decided that first he needed to find the places where the traps were set up, and then already reveal the location of the doctor. He had a bad feeling because of the information he received. If the police continued inaction, the doctor's life would be in danger. That's why the guy decided to act on his own. The guy wanted to protect Dr. Liang at all costs. When he arrived at the place, he immediately discovered all the traps set up. He jumped on a tree and tore down all the traps that were set by the criminals. It even amused him to tear down the traps, because setting the trap for the criminals was probably very hard. As he lands on the ground, he notices that if he hadn't scouted the situation, the police officers would have fallen into the trap, but now everything was going to go smoothly. At the same instant, he heard someone's voice. He was too close to the facility and was able to hear the voice of Dr. Liang, who was in danger. All 4 criminals gathered around the doctor. One of the men splashed water on the doctor to rouse her. The ringleader of the whole gang asks that the doctor answer where she hid the golden Buddha. The woman admits that she doesn't understand what's going on. After all, they've had the golden Buddha since childhood, and no one has ever told her where it was found. One man can't hold back any longer. He declares that a couple of idiots stole not only the golden Buddha, but also spent 4 million. He doesn't understand how their daughter couldn't have known about such a thing. Dr. Liang informs him that she doesn't know anything, because her parents abandoned her and she didn't get a single coin from their funds. Therefore, the criminals can kill her, only there would be no point in doing so. The criminals do not understand what to do next, because their plan has failed. Earlier, the man thought that Liang worked as a secretary, and if he finds her, he will definitely be able to get to the golden Buddha. Now it turned out that the woman knew absolutely nothing about it. The man asks the other to leave the woman on the street, as it was time for them to run away. The man asked not to blame him, as the girls saw their faces, so they can't just let her go. Huang Ji decides that now is the time to save Dr. Liang. The men panic when they hear a noise, because it seems that their trap has been triggered and someone is coming up the mountain. However, they still wanted to finish the matter with Dr. Liang. Huang Ji didn't like this situation. He didn't understand why men were so cruel. They left him no choice, and Huang Ji decided to pretend to be an idiot to divert the criminals' attention. The man with glasses didn't realize who appeared in front of him. One of the men pointed out that the man in front of them must be a villager. Dr. Liang asks that the criminals not touch the guy as he is sick and does not recognize the criminals. One of the criminals has heard of him. He recognizes him as Huang Ji, the village's famous idiot. Then the boss orders the man to deal with the idiot. Huang Ji starts to bump away, trying to create a ruckus. Huang Ji wonders why the woman is bleeding. The doctor, on the other hand, tries to protect the guy and ask him to leave the place. The boss is fed up with all this and informs the doctor that she has found a companion in the other world and that he will join her. The man decided to immediately follow the boss's order and deal with the idiot. Huang Ji did not wait for his death and decided to counterattack. The man immediately started panting because he didn't expect such a quick reaction and punch from the idiot. The other criminal immediately stood in his place. He didn't realize what his accomplice was doing. He even called his accomplice useless, and that he always had to redo everything for him. He attacked Huang Ji, but the latter easily grabbed the man's elbow. This blow hamstrung his opponent, and Huang Ji easily finished off his opponent. A third criminal intervened, but Huang Ji easily blocked his attack. Afterwards, Huang Ji sent the criminal flying with a precise leg kick. All the defeated criminals were in front of that idiot. The boss didn't understand why his subordinates still hadn't dealt with the snotty youngster. Wang Zhen, standing on all fours himself, didn't understand why his arms and legs were numb and he couldn't stand up. This made the boss stand up and look at the young idiot in front of him. He found the guy in front of him quite interesting. This was the first time Huang Ji had used this kind of ability. He didn't think that it would go so well. He wasn't a fool and understood very well that even as a strong fighter, it was very dangerous to fight with people who had weapons. The men made one failed attempt after another. As long as Huang Ji observed the state of his opponent's muscles and joints, he could anticipate all of his future actions in advance to give the best possible response. After defeating the two criminals, Huang Ji looked at the boss. The boss immediately got into a defensive stance, and he even asked Huang Ji if he was going to attack them. The boss orders the last of the subordinates to attack Huang Ji together. Huang Ji didn't hesitate and immediately ran to Dr. Liang and told her that he found out that the doctor was kidnapped. The woman is shocked that the guy was able to deal with two criminals. She doesn't understand how the guy managed to do it. The boss and subordinate froze at that moment. Untangling the woman, Huang Ji admits that he just threw a couple of punches indiscriminately. He didn't expect the men to fall so quickly. The woman is hurt, and so the guy wants to get her home as soon as possible. The woman doesn't believe it, and there are still two criminals left. She tells Huang Ji to go down the mountain as fast as possible and call the police. The boss and subordinate, meanwhile, decide to seize their opportunity while Huang Ji forgot about them. With a slight duck and a swing of his elbows, Huang Ji easily knocks the weapons out of the hands of the criminals. The woman pounces on one of the men and tells him not to touch Huang Ji. As soon as the man falls to the floor, the woman immediately tells Huang Ji to run away. However, at this moment, Huang Ji twisted the boss's arm. The boss is the most surprised. To him, the guy seems very strange. He originally thought that Huang Ji was hitting at random, but it turns out that his punches hurt a lot. In the same instant, Huang Ji seals the boss face first into the floor, to the great shock of the doctor and the other criminal. Huang Ji notices that the boss is such a weakling because he didn't even use force, and the boss has already fallen down. As it turns out, Huang Ji often does physical work while the boss is mostly sitting down. After so long, the police finally arrive on the scene. Officer Wang orders the criminals to lower their weapons as they are surrounded. Suddenly, Officer Wang notices a very strange situation. All the suspected criminals are lying on the floor, and their local idiot is standing over the boss. The boss even starts crying at this point. He has been preparing for so many years for this moment, he never thought that some idiot would take and ruin everything. Later, Officer Wang put a vest over the woman and gave her a glass of warm water. To be sure of what was happening, he asked the woman if he had correctly realized that she had been rescued by Huang Ji. Dr. Liang confirms this because if it wasn't for Huang Ji's help, she would have been dead by now. The officer wonders what Huang Ji forgot on the mountain. He also praises the guy and asks him not to run away anymore and not to make grandfather worry. Looking at the criminals, Officer Wang wonders if Lu Jingmin is among them. The boss is shocked. He couldn't understand how the police knew his name. After all, he is usually called by his nickname by everyone. Since the criminals don't want to cooperate, then Officer Wang thinks they will be comfortable keeping quiet in the police station. Huang Ji decides to walk Dr. Liang home. She thanks the guy for being there for her and saving her. The guy is all glowing and states that grandfather says that people should act according to their conscience. Dr. Liang smiled slightly at these words and felt that the guy's grandfather was right on this point. This made the woman become bolder, so she called Officer Wang over and decided to give him some more information about the case. In this way, the kidnapping case in Huazhuang village was safely concluded. Dr. Liang told the police all the details of her involvement in the theft from the museum that year. If she had spoken up earlier about what was so troubling to her, the stone would have fallen from her soul as soon as possible. She had decided to get rid of her attachment to her foster parents too. She didn't want anything to bind them together anymore. The problem with the threatening letter that had appeared was also solved in no time. The boss reported that he had written the letter. He confessed that actually, deep down, he didn't like his nickname, so he decided to write his real name. He was forced to, and he had nothing to do with it. Lu Jingming decided to make himself look like a victim to somehow shorten his prison sentence. However, the police couldn't really believe it, because the other accomplices claimed that Lu Jingmin was their boss. However, the boss continued to deny it and convinced everyone that he was framed in the case. Even though the police had their doubts, they still had no other suspects. As long as it pays off, everyone will talk nonsense to reduce their jail time. The police would not suspect Huang Ji, but he did not behave very nicely. A few days later, when the villagers were harvesting their crops, they were distracted by sudden events. The villagers wondered why the police had come to the place again. As it turned out, the police came along with Dr. Liang's foster parents. Most likely, Huang Ji had somehow reported the whereabouts of the doctor's parents to the police. That was what his despicable act that he had mentioned earlier was all about. After that, the doctor's foster parents were led to the village reservoir. The doctor's foster father reported that it is at the bottom. Officer Wang notices that the couple had built up the reservoir before leaving the province. The parents have already explained everything. They spent all 4 million and only had a few 100,000 left. The golden Buddha was hidden in this reservoir. He also asked that Huang Ji pay attention to those who came with the criminals, since those were from the provincial museum. The guy couldn't blindly believe the criminals that they had spent all the money. After taking a closer look at the man, the guy realizes that the man has a hidden deposit, which is $3,150,485. Huang Ji even recognized the specific location of the hidden deposit. The foster father naively thought that he would be able to spend his money after he got out of prison, but Huang Ji was not going to let that happen. Soon a chest was recovered from the reservoir. Upon opening the chest, the experts were convinced that in front of them was a golden Buddha of the Tang dynasty, which had been stolen last year from a museum. Officer Wang doubts that it is a golden Buddha, as the element looked more like copper than gold in appearance. However, the expert assures that the Buddha statue is actually much heavier than ordinary bronze statues. After measuring it, they found that the weight of the Buddha is very close to the volume of gold. Therefore, they concluded that the inside of the Buddha statue is actually gold, but the surface is covered with a layer of copper. Officer Wang also believes that the weight will not lie. Huang Ji check whether this is the case. After scanning with his gaze, he realizes that it is not gold. The density of the Buddha statue clearly exceeded that of gold. The Buddha statue was basically composed of iron, silicon, and some unknown element. It seems that the elements that are not found on Earth are remnants of alien civilizations. And it looks like what is inside the statue is some kind of precision instrument that was delivered by an observer from the moon, and the recipient was an Indian monk. The monk was called Jodasita, and he seems to have been a very famous man. The box with the statue was covered with a lid and was being prepared for transportation to the museum. Other than the information Huang Ji had gotten, there was no further information he could get. If only he could open the statue, then he would be able to get more information then. The aliens had been on Earth a long time ago and had even left their creations behind. But the guy was curious about the aliens' purpose. If humans in the eyes of the aliens are just tasty food, then he didn't understand why the aliens would bother giving Earthlings the products of alien civilizations. After he lost the statue of the golden Buddha, then he was lost to the loss of the keys to solving this mystery. He knew very little about alien civilizations, and in addition, he had a dull no scanty supply of relevant scientific and astronomical knowledge. Because of this, his ability to assimilate information could not be utilized to its full potential. Therefore, if he wanted to continue to gather information related to the alien civilization, he could not stay in the mountain village where he lived. He must send to the big city to get more information. Will he manage to do it, how to do it, and will his grandfather let him go? What do you think of this story? At night, Huang Ji went to a secret place to dig up the money that the doctor's foster father had stolen and hidden. With a little bit of shoveling, the guy found what he came for. In his opinion, no one would have thought that such a suitcase held $3 million. The girl's adoptive father had hidden 3 million yuan not far from the golden Buddha. However, even such logic and counter-logic were completely useless in front of Huang Ji's ability. Passwords were also useless in front of the guy. He easily opened the suitcase with the password and then didn't think twice and just decided to take all the money for himself. Huang Ji realized that studying the information about the aliens would definitely cost a lot of money. Therefore, he calculated that these $3 million would be his initial capital. However, he needed to leave the village first, otherwise he wouldn't be able to spend the money in the direction he wanted. I wonder what the tax office and the police would say to this when a poor guy suddenly spends such large sums of money. Besides that, Huang Ji couldn't let grandfather's disease progress, and if they continued like this without doing anything about the disease, grandfather would die in 5 years. However, there was the most important issue that needed to be resolved. It would be very difficult for the grandson to ask his grandfather to allow him to move to the city, as the grandfather has mistaken his grandson for a seriously ill child all his life. So it would be very difficult for the grandfather to agree to his grandson living alone in the city. In the end, he decided to go to school. Previously, he studied only in junior high school because of his intellectual problems, so the grandfather was very worried about how the grandson will continue to live. The guy decides to tell his grandfather that he wants to continue studying at school. The grandfather himself would hardly be able to take his grandson, but he can ask acquaintances to do it. Huang Ji put all these things off until tomorrow. He pulled the suitcase with the money and immediately fell down. $3 million in cash was heavier than he thought. The money suitcase weighed over 50 kilograms and the suitcase had no wheels. He was furious about this problem because he would have to carry this suitcase for half his life, so he had to find a place to hide the suitcase. In the morning, the grandfather wondered why his grandson was so tired. Huang Ji explains it to the grandfather that he just didn't get enough sleep, although in fact he was practically dragging the suitcase with money until the morning. After breakfast, the guy went to see if there was a man who would agree to take him to the city. Walking through the village, he began to look around at the villagers in the village. Soon Huang Ji sat down on a rock and sighed. He still couldn't find any villagers who would agree to take him to the city. Even Officer Wang, who came from the city, didn't want to go back there. Huang Ji even thought that the city was such a scary place since no one wanted to go there. Suddenly the guy saw the village chief walking by. The guy quickly scanned the village chief since he was in a good mood. Huang Ji liked the information he saw from the old man. A few days later, Zheng Xuan and Su Lingli came to the village, and the village chief was glad to hear this information. The village chief was so happy that he greeted the guests and welcomed them. Huang Ji recalled that Su Lingli used to study in Shanghai and then worked there after graduation. She was a kind-hearted person, so the guy didn't think she would refuse his request. Zheng Xuan, on the contrary, was very suspicious. Huang Ji used his ability to study the information about the man. Zheng Xuan was 29 years old. His main profession was a translator, but he also worked as a hacker. His work experience was 10 years. The global rating was 683. The man also accumulated a good fortune, 70,000 bitcoins, as well as $1 million. The guy was even surprised that the hacker had such an impressive fortune. Huang Ji could gain knowledge and skills by recovering the memory of the object. If he had enough time, he could even learn Zheng Xuan's hacking skills. In 1 second, he could only memorize 1 second of information, which was too inefficient. If it was any key skills, the basic knowledge was not learned as fast as reading a book, so his ability had its own limitations. Seeing the guy, Su Lingli asked him to come over to her and take a seat with them. The girl decided to introduce them and introduced her boyfriend. She even asked Huang Ji to call her boyfriend Uncle Zheng, although Zheng Xuan didn't consider himself old enough to be called uncle. The girl informed her boyfriend that Huang Ji had a mild form of intellectual disability, but it was safe to socialize with him. Zheng Xuan calmly took note of this information. After that, Huang Ji told Su Lingli about his desire to study and then called his grandfather for dinner. The village chief called Zheng Xuan at that moment because there was a problem with his TV set, and Su Lingli said that her boyfriend was good with technology. Zheng Xuan said to rely on him and that he would take care of everything. When Zheng Xuan looked at the TV, he noticed that it was an ancient TV and that there was no other TV like it in the city. He only hoped that there was no hardware malfunction in the TV, otherwise everything would have to be replaced. Huang Ji didn't miss his chance and praised Zheng Xuan for being so cool that he could even fix TVs. As Zheng Xuan examines the inside of the TV, he remarks that there is nothing special about it and that the TV will soon fail again anyway. Zheng Xuan will only extend the life of the village chief's TV a little, but the village chief will still have to buy a new TV. Zheng Xuan wonders where his decoder is, at which point Huang Ji holds out the part to him and wonders if he needs it. Zheng Xuan confirms that he needs the part. After Huang Ji wonders if Zheng Xuan needs the part or not and holds out the part to Zheng Xuan, again correctly guessing the part, Zheng Xuan is already wary and wonders how the guy could know this. Having finally fixed the TV, Zheng Xuan wonders if the guy has ever done TV repair before. Huang Ji shakes his head negatively. Zheng Xuan doesn't understand how the guy knew what he needed back then. Huang Ji notes that he just watched Zheng Xuan disassemble the TV and memorized it like that. However, it all seemed too suspicious to Zheng Xuan because in his opinion, people don't have time to memorize everything in such a short period of time. Even if he took a picture, it is not a fact that he would have understood everything. He even makes the assumption that the guy might have a photographic memory. He decides to test the guy on his abilities. He quickly took the laptop apart, then asked the guy to help him with the assembly of the laptop. Huang Ji agreed and started to assemble the laptop. Zheng Xuan noted that the guy's movements were smooth, and his execution technique was very precise. He would hardly believe that this was the guy's first time fixing something. Soon Huang Ji was holding out the assembled laptop to Zheng Xuan. Zheng Xuan had no way of knowing if the guy was definitely in trouble or if he had genius syndrome. Su Lingli soon dropped by and inquired about the progress of fixing the TV. Zheng Xuan notes that they managed to fix everything, and also that Huang Ji was able to assemble the laptop himself. Hugging her boyfriend, the girl wondered why Huang Ji didn't tell her grandfather about his abilities. Zheng Xuan even felt sorry that such talents were lost in the villages, but he was not at liberty to give any instruction about life. Su Lingli recalled that the guy had told her that he had dropped out of school. She even wonders if he would like to continue his studies if he has the opportunity to study in Shanghai. Huang Ji confesses that he wants to continue studying, but he is not sure if his grandfather will give his consent to do so. The girl asks Huang Ji to talk to his grandfather since the guy has such abilities and he's staying in the village. What abilities is she even talking about when she hasn't even seen anything, and he just assembled a laptop once, and she's already prophesying a great future for him? He had thought this way, Su Lingli would try to help him get permission from his grandfather to move. However, the grandfather was adamant and immediately refused his grandson's offer. The guy was even surprised that it wasn't as simple as he had planned in his head. The village chief also intervened in the conversation and remarked that it was a good sign that the guy wanted to learn and that such things should be encouraged. However, the grandfather is still against it because the others don't know what his grandson has been through. His grandson has been bullied all the time, so he doesn't want to let it happen anymore. Zheng Xuan decided to stand up for the guy and said that the guy is very capable and that he was even able to repair the old laptop himself. The grandfather is also shocked at how his grandson managed to do this, since he was diligent and never touched other people's stuff. Zheng Xuan notices that the guy has talent. Besides, you don't have to study for a long time to succeed, so the guy was lucky. Zheng Xuan realizes that the guy has a problem, but he notices that people sometimes show talents that were not previously inherent to them. So he asks the guy to show it all to his grandfather. The village chief is shocked, because even Wang, the best repairman in the village, could not master such techniques. Huang Ji didn't argue and decided to demonstrate his skills to his grandfather. He quickly assembled the laptop. The village chief was shocked by what he saw. The grandfather also didn't fully understand what had just happened in front of his eyes. He noticed that while his grandson was assembling the laptop, his grandson's face was so concentrated. On normal days, the guy had the same expression on his face and didn't change in any way. It was the first time the grandfather had seen his grandson so enthusiastic about something. The grandfather was so happy for his grandson that he was not hopeless after all, and that he was finally able to find something he was interested in. The village chief even suggested that the guy enroll in a technical school. Zheng Xuan knew of a technical college that offered a 3+2 system. The first 2 years would be high school material, and the remaining 3 years would be devoted to vocational skills. After completing his studies at the technical college, the guy could get a diploma of higher education. The certificate would then not be of use to him, and he would not have to retake the exams. Huang Ji is all glowing with such information. However, the grandfather is still worried about whether his grandson will be able to cope with all this. The village chief realizes that the grandfather is still worried, but he notices that the guy is not as stupid as everyone thought. In addition, the village chief notes that Zheng Xuan and Su Lingli will be with the guy to help him. If the guy can complete his studies, he will be able to get a good job in the future. This was very good news. The grandfather understood everything perfectly well, but he just lacked confidence. After all, Shanghai was a metropolis, so the grandfather didn't fully understand if his grandson would be able to adapt when his grandson had never even traveled outside the village. The grandfather was worried that he wouldn't be able to learn anything about his grandson's condition and problems when the grandson was so far away, especially if his grandson started being bullied again. Su Lingli was worried about the guy and wanted to somehow calm down the worried grandfather. Zheng Xuan notices that he and the lad won't be able to go to school and they won't be able to check. So he felt sorry that the guy would stay in the village like this. Huang Ji told his grandfather that he would listen to what he said, and if his grandfather said not to go, he would not go anywhere. He would always be by grandfather's side and take care of him. The grandfather was saddened by such news. His grandson hit him in the most painful place. He had spent his whole life raising his grandson, but he had not achieved anything good himself. He could not cripple his grandson's life. Other than farming, he had nothing to teach his grandson. Besides, he was worried about what would happen when he died. He was worried that his grandson would be left all alone and would not be able to survive in the world without help. Grandfather wanted his grandson to be happy and not to be bullied. In the end, the grandfather gave in to his grandson's persuasions because he did not want his grandson to be only around him all his life. A grandfather informs his grandson that his grandson should learn something new. Besides, his grandson had a talent for something, so he didn't want his grandson to waste his talent sitting in the village. The grandfather hugged his grandson and gave him permission to leave to study, but asked his grandson to study hard. Huang Ji was so happy that grandfather finally gave his permission. He promises that he will study hard. The guy knew that his grandfather was always worried about him, so there was no way he could let his grandfather down. He even apologizes to his grandfather. Huang Ji swears in his heart that he will study medicine and will definitely be able to cure his grandfather. At this moment, tears welled up in his eyes. Afterward, the guy was going to deal with the alien invaders. After saying goodbye to his grandfather, Huang Ji, along with Zheng Xuan and Su Lingli, took a train to the city. Before long, they reached the city. While at the train station, the guy was looking around because it was his first time in the city and he didn't know what a city was. Zheng Xuan asked the guy not to go far away from them so that he wouldn't get lost. They were going to show the guy where he was going to live first. After a while, they find themselves in front of a high-rise building. Su Lingli says that she is busy at work, so she asks Zheng Xuan to take care of the guy further and show him around the apartment. Zheng Xuan thinks it's problematic for everyone to live together, so he offers to rent a place for the guy to live. Su Lingli didn't like this information. She didn't understand what could be so valuable in her boyfriend's apartment that she even assumed that her boyfriend was going to take girls to the apartment while she was away. Zheng Xuan denied such claims by the girl and asked her to trust him. In fact, he never got around to telling his girlfriend that he was working as a hacker. Su Lingli didn't care about the guys anymore as she called her boss and informed him that she had just returned to the city and would be at work soon. The girl then explained that she had to go to work and left Zheng Xuan to look after Huang Ji. Zheng Xuan allocated the guy a room in their apartment absolutely free of charge. He then said that his room was next door, and if the guy needed anything, he could come and call him. Huang Ji asks Zheng Xuan not to worry as he is not going to give him any trouble. Zheng Xuan is glad that the guy understands. Huang Ji realizes that Zheng Xuan has his own secrets, and he also has his own secrets. So he thinks it would be good if they don't interfere with each other and each mind their own business. Huang Ji remembers that when they were driving home from the train station, he saw a bookstore, so he asks Zheng Xuan's permission to go there. Zheng Xuan doesn't mind such a request from the guy. After that, they went to the Xinhua bookstore. Zheng Xuan was a responsible guy and stayed close to Huang Ji, keeping an eye on him and what books Huang Ji was reading. Huang Ji was getting a little annoyed that Zheng Xuan was following him around and wouldn't give up. Huang Ji finally gives up and tells Zheng Xuan that he wants to sit and read for a while longer, but Zheng Xuan must have his own things to do. He promises that he will handle everything himself. Only after that, a tired Zheng Xuan decided to go home, which was nearby. He asked the guy to come home for dinner, but then he changed his mind and decided he would follow the guy to the bookstore himself. Huang Ji was glad that Zheng Xuan had stopped following him. After that, he finally decided to go after the thing he needed. After waiting for Zheng Xuan to leave the bookstore, Huang Ji went to the subway. After looking at the subway map, the guy found the city's mail sorting center. Soon, the guy was at the city mail sorting center. He came to the place to pick up his things and showed his ID card. Huang Ji said that his things from Huazhuang village were sent 2 days ago, and he was wondering if his things had already arrived. The man smilingly decided to check, and then reported that a few hours ago the items had arrived. Huang Ji thinks that the things are heavy, so he asks to rent a cart. After that, he rolled out with the cart to the street. On the street, he caught a cab and asked the driver to take him to the east side of the city, to the Platinum House. After getting into the cab, Huang Ji was glad that he sent the money suitcase away before leaving. It would have been incredibly hard for him to carry such a heavy bag by himself. Since the money had arrived, he was now going to find an apartment. I wonder how he would be allowed to do something like this by Su Lingli. I'm curious as to how the author of the manhwa decided to come up with such a thing. I have a large number of questions as the story progresses. How did people assume the guy was a genius if he only put together a laptop that had been taken apart before? How did he manage to mail $3 million? Postal parcels are no longer inspected in China, and it's free to mail anything you want, including such a large sum of money. How can he avoid the scrutiny of the tax authorities when a poor guy from the countryside suddenly rents a nice apartment in the city? I haven't yet taken into account that the author feels like he has absolutely no idea what such a disease implies, which the author gave the guy. Zheng Xuan took the guy in to live with him for free, albeit at Su Lingli's request. Su Lingli and Zheng Xuan took responsibility for the guy given his problem. Zheng Xuan looked after the guy quite responsibly and didn't let him go alone in an unfamiliar city. Huang Ji, on the other hand, is acting like a real ungrateful pig. They gave him a room for free in the apartment, took him out of the village under their own responsibility, knowing about his problems. Besides, the young couple has their own life, and the guy takes and resents, and he is not happy with the close attention. There are too many conventions in this manhwa that one has to turn a blind eye to. Such conventions in manhwa should have been finalized, as the idea itself doesn't seem outright bad. These are only a small part of the questions that arise when reading this manhwa. What if the author of the story is actually implying that Huang Ji made up all the events and they are only happening in his head? What if the guy is actually so seriously ill that he made up a separate world where he is a superhero? Then it's actually a very sad story. Plus, it explains all the inconsistencies in the plot, since the guy just didn't know about all these things in the world. Soon, Huang Ji reached the high-rise building that was known as the Platinum House. Upon entering the lobby of the building, the guy found that there was no one there. So he wondered loudly if there was anyone in the place. Suddenly, a girl came out to the noise and was surprised that there were guests in the house. The guy immediately got excited and said that he had already talked to the girl on the phone about wanting to rent an apartment in the Platinum House. The girl recalled the guy calling her and that the guy had told her on the phone that he wanted to rent an apartment with 4 bedrooms and 2 living rooms. Huang Ji confirmed his rental offer and asked if there was any problem with that, given the tone of the girl's voice. The girl didn't question further and went to walk the guy to the proposed apartment. The girl couldn't help but wonder where such a poor guy got the money from, but despite the questions that arose in her mind, she didn't ask them. Huang Ji thought that he was mistaken for a poor man because of his clothes, and that clothes are also important when first thinking about a person. Soon the girl led the guy to one of the apartments. She inquired how he liked the apartment. The girl also pointed out that this apartment was not only spacious, but the light and ventilation were in excellent condition. After noting the pros of the apartment, the girl announced the price of 5,000 yuan per month. She also mentioned that the price would increase next season. From the looks of it, the apartment was obviously not in the best condition, and the girl obviously brought the guy to this apartment because she thought he didn't have the money for a decent apartment. Huang Ji extracted the information from the apartment, and it turned out that no one had stayed in the apartment for 7 months. To make matters worse, the apartment was cold and damp, there were a lot of mosquitoes, and a man had died in that apartment. The guy, who has been in the village all his life, immediately noticed that the apartment was disgusting. He noted that the girl was doing a very good job, but he knew that a person had died in the apartment and that no one had lived in the apartment for several months. The girl had not yet had time to comprehend the words said by the guy, as he immediately noted that there is a better apartment upstairs and asked to show it. The girl is shocked by such a proposal. In her thoughts, she only remembers that in that apartment there were additional services, so the guy should not have known about it. Huang Ji, like someone who had recently won the lottery, immediately took out a wad of money and boasted that he was holding 100,000 yuan and asked the girl to show another apartment. The girl couldn't refuse the money, so she immediately took the 100,000 yen and was going to do everything. She even somehow decided that the guy in front of her was some cool businessman, and that's why he had so much money with him and had information about the Platinum House. Having led him to the door of a nice apartment, the girl asked if the guy was satisfied with the apartment. She even offered to go inside the apartment with him and help him relax. However, the guy closed the door right in front of her face and refused her services. The girl was not desperate and decided to look for another victim for her services. Surely this is a Platinum House and not a house located in the red light district. Taking a seat on the bed, the guy was glad that a temporary abode had been found. After that, he proceeded to purchase a computer. Soon there were many couriers outside the Platinum House. One of them asked if they were all carrying computer parts. Someone said he was carrying a printer. One of the couriers was, because he doesn't know anything about computers, and the customer specified not only the model needed, but also the shopping center where everything could be purchased. The courier was pleased with such professionalism of the customer. The couriers reached the door to the guy's apartment, and the guy greeted them happily. The girl at this time looked out from around the corner. She was wondering why so many couriers and such a large number of boxes had appeared. Once the couriers brought everything into the apartment, Huang Ji started to assemble the computer. Soon he had assembled everything he originally wanted and stood happily looking at the result of his work. He had never used a computer before, so he was a little worried about whether or not he would be able to do it. Without hesitation, he sat down at the computer and started looking for information. He had a big gap between theory and practice, so he had to get used to it. However, as soon as he sat down at the computer, he immediately got a headache from the large amount of information he received. Finally, the guy typed in a search engine query about aliens. However, the guy was in for a big disappointment, because he had only familiarized himself with what nonsense could be on the internet. Aliens versus Godzilla, an alien media company, an alien router. All of this information was strange to the guy. After a little thought, he decided to search by keywords: aliens, space, moon. Luck had finally smiled on him, or at least he thought so. He came across information that aliens were on the backside of the moon and that a spaceship was moored on the moon. He also found information that the United States had seen a UFO on the moon. The guy was surprised and pleased that so many people like him believed in the existence of aliens. He was surprised that even though people didn't have his abilities, they were still able to detect the aliens from the traces left behind. Huang Ji found that a user under the nickname Nami Nitro Gold had posted a lot of content related to aliens. For example, Nami Nitro Gold wondered about whether aliens have always been on the side of humanity. He also wondered if there was an alien base on the moon. Although Huang Ji thought that all the information was hidden and the American astronauts could already see everything, Huang Ji wondered how Nami Nitro Gold could know the secret information then. Huang Ji decided to check Nami Nitro Gold and found that Dong'an was currently using the computer in Cafe 112 and that his funds were 15 yuan. Huang Ji complained that the information through the network was limited and it was necessary to meet face-to-face. All of this was not surprising, since the guy couldn't even recognize Piccolo. Huang Ji was surprised that Nami Nitro Gold didn't use his own identity card, but someone else's found on the internet. The guy came to the conclusion that since Nami Nitro Gold was a minor, he could hide like this. So he decided to write Nami Nitro Gold in private messages first. It's entirely possible that they'll both be taken to a psychiatric hospital in 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, Nami Nitro Gold still hadn't answered the guy. He thought that things would continue like this, then dinner would come and he would have to go home. The guy decided not to wait any longer and added Nami Nitro Gold as a friend. However, when sending a friendship request, a key question was asked. According to it, the guy had to answer the question, "What is Nami Nitro Gold's favorite game?" The omniscient and all-knowing Huang Ji failed to do so and was denied friendship. Huang Ji became furious as he couldn't understand why he was denied friendship. Since Nami Nitro Gold didn't want to accept him, he decided to log in from Nami Nitro Gold's account and send a friend request to himself. Huang Ji then wrote to Nami Nitro Gold saying that he had some ideas about aliens that he would like to discuss. However, Nami Nitro Gold strongly disliked this approach. He started hurling insults in the guy's direction, and also asked the hacker to get off his back. After all, even if the guy had added him as a friend, it didn't mean that he would communicate with him. It was even funny to him that the guy was asking him about aliens. Huang Ji was even surprised, because it turns out that on the internet, people communicate in such a way, like Nami Nitro Gold. Huang Ji didn't stop there and asked Nami Nitro Gold to shut up. He said that he wanted to ask Nami Nitro Gold for information that was interesting to him, and asked Nami Nitro Gold to answer honestly. Then the guy threatened that he knew Nami Nitro Gold very well and dictated his number. Nami Nitro Gold immediately said that he was too young and asked the uncle not to get hot. Huang Ji was upset, because it seems that he was wrong about the guy and he doesn't know anything. However, he didn't stop there and decided to try again, offering Nami Nitro Gold to talk via video call. It's usually after such calls from uncles to teenagers that the police are reported. Once Huang Ji contacted the guy via video call, then Nami Nitro Gold wondered why he was seeing the guy. Huang Ji, on the other hand, told the guy not to ask any questions. It seems that he decided to call himself Nami Nitro Gold because of his hair. It turns out that Huang Ji can't get information about the person on the other side through video and voice, because what he sees now is just an electromagnetic signal broadcast seen on a screen that doesn't match the conditions for seeing and hearing directly. Huang Ji immediately told the guy that he saw he post on the internet about aliens. He was curious as to why the guy thought such a thing and what his reasoning was. Huang Ji was curious how the guy knew that American astronauts had seen aliens. Nami Nitro Gold brags that he found all these secrets in secret FBI files. He also revealed the information that aliens destroyed the Challenger. Nami Nitro Gold doesn't stop there and tells the guy that the aliens have reached an agreement with the United States to help develop weapons and that there is an underground base in Area 51. Huang Ji felt increasingly enlightened by such valuable knowledge. However, he was very upset when Nami Nitro Gold began to tell him that the United States had not landed on the moon, and that all the live broadcasts from that year had been filmed in advance. Nami Nitro Gold even asks to point out that there is no water on the moon, and he then wonders where such clear footprints came from, and other than that, there should be no shadow. It finally reached Huang Ji that the guy in front of him will not give him any useful information and is talking nonsense, so Huang Ji turned off the computer. The guy had long known about the astronauts landing on the moon and that it was pure truth. Now he needed to go back to the bookstore as soon as possible. Soon, Zheng Xuan returned to the bookstore after work. He informed that it was time for dinner and came to walk the guy home. Huang Ji picked up a whole stack of books from the bookstore that Zheng Xuan was even surprised by this, and that the guy likes to read so much. Huang Ji decided to put aside the alien matter for now and focus on gaining more knowledge first. He lacked even basic knowledge, so he needed to catch up as soon as possible. The guy began to study diligently, as if he was making intensive preparations for Gaokao. After reading a book, he immediately internalized the material, not even needing to read a second time. He hadn't been very good at reading books before. Recalling them was a waste of his ability to absorb information. Any information he read or learned was automatically stored in his mind. It was basically like a photographic memory, only in an enhanced form. Even if he lost his memory, he was sure that he would be able to recover all the information stored in his head almost immediately. Besides, he not only memorized all the information, but could also put it into practice. This ability set him apart from other people who took a long time to learn something. What a wonderful ability! The author himself probably admired people with photographic memory and dreamed of an improved version of such a human ability. However, the guy realized that knowledge should be constantly updated, not dust on the shelf. He used to know the word gravity, but he had not systematically studied the corresponding theory of cognition, so he could not get information about the gravity of an object. Looking at the cabinet, Huang Ji immediately realized that the gravity it was subjected to was 2,905.251 thousandths. He didn't even need to calculate the formula because he could see at a glance how much gravity the object was subjected to. However, if the cabinet was placed in a different place, the gravity would become different, but even such differences could not escape his eyes. After that, Huang Ji decided to learn the basics of physics. The basics of physics would not only allow him to gain more information and strengthen his understanding of the brain through learning, but also explore the possibilities of his abilities further, so learning was necessary for him. The next day, Zheng Xuan left his room and complained that he had been up half the night again. He knocked on Huang Ji's room and said that it was already time for breakfast. However, Huang Ji was already awake and informed that he had already had breakfast and that his door was unlocked, and Zheng Xuan could enter the room. When Zheng Xuan approached him, he saw his textbooks and asked him how he was doing in his studies. Huang Ji admitted that he had not read much in the past, so he had to catch up urgently. Zheng Xuan asks the guy to study hard and strive to succeed in the future so as not to let his grandfather down. He said that he had important things to do in the morning, but he was going to take the guy to school in the afternoon to look around. Once Zheng Xuan left the room, then the guy admits that he had already finished reading a book on mechanical engineering in one evening, but he couldn't tell Zheng Xuan about it. While sorting through the books, he remembered that he had thought about practicing medicine, but as it turned out, it was a very expensive occupation, and he had already spent quite a lot, so he decided that he would only read books for now. Digging through the boxes, he found a book on the basics of traditional Chinese medicine. Although modern Western medicine already had a complete research system on the human body, if he looked at it from the perspective of traditional Chinese medicine, the mysteries of the human body were limitless. He was able to learn from the book that the existing set of traditional Chinese medicine was called 409 acupuncture points, but only half of the acupuncture points were being used. There were quite a few points not yet discovered. Besides the 12th, 15th, and 8th meridians, the guy could recognize 9 hidden meridians as well as more than 20 side meridians. Among them, it would be better for him to study the hidden meridians. In the book, there were major veins, and the location of acupuncture points was constantly changing. As it turns out, over the centuries people have gradually forgotten that qi and blood should interact together, and that's why people often get sick. He even noticed that one meridian is mainly responsible for transmitting neuroelectrochemical signals from 5 internal organs and 6 other indicators, and that it is the very real platform for controlling the human body. After learning this information, he decided to think about how athletes were better than regular people. If one thought of muscles, then this answer was wrong. Huang Ji realized that it was all about endurance internal organs. If the muscles were to tense up abruptly, it would put a huge strain on the human body. However, if one integrates a powerful visceral system, it will help to quickly strengthen and stimulate all aspects of human body functions, such as nutrition, blood supply, detoxification, immunity, and body fluid regulation. To Huang Ji, this internal force seemed very powerful. For precise coordination and control, the only method that can be used at present is acupuncture and cauterization. However, the guy felt that this method was not very convenient because some acupuncture points were hidden in very strange places and he couldn't reach them with one hand. There were even some acupuncture points that were hidden between important organs and bones that couldn't be reached by acupuncture and cauterization. There were only 2 places a guy could start. One controlled the blood supply system and the other stimulated growth. They were all very practical acupuncture points. Deciding not to delay any longer, the guy took off his shirt and decided to treat the Yunmen, Zhongfu, and Tianqi points. After all, these acupuncture points were used as landmarks. However, it wasn't as easy as he originally thought, and it was incredibly hard for him. He had developed shortness of breath. A problem appeared in his blood vessels that he couldn't understand anything about. He needed to fix his position so that he wouldn't miss again, especially since he only had one try. Trying again, he could feel the fat deposits burning intensely and also that his lungs were expanding. Every organ in his body began to grow. He had to change his posture but try to contain the pain. Do not repeat never after this genius, and also having read something once from the book, immediately do it, because it can harm your health and lead to very sad consequences. After changing his position, he felt that he wanted to sleep and finally gave up and decided that he could rest. After a while, Huang Ji felt that his heart and lungs had grown, which made him very happy. However, in exchange, 5 years of his life were taken away from him. The guy was surprised that 5 years had been taken from his life and made the assumption that he had injected toxins. In addition, he noticed that his liver and kidneys had not grown. Only now did he realize that maybe his store of knowledge wasn't enough and that there must be some other way to cleanse the body without acupuncture and cauterization. Is he going to be a space marine? Just at this moment, Zheng Xuan called the guy out for lunch. So quickly the time flew by from breakfast to lunch. After lunch, Huang Ji went with Zheng Xuan to the school building. Zheng Xuan showed the guy where he would be studying before classes started. He good-naturedly decided to show everything to the kid in this school. The first thing he did was to show the guy the cafe where he used to go before. After taking a closer look at the school, Huang Ji disappointedly noticed that the school didn't have famous teachers or advanced academics. This school was basically categorized as a fee-based school. He was even sorry that he wouldn't be able to dive into his student life. But most of all, he didn't want to waste such a precious resource he had, time, especially since he had recently taken 5 years of his life. Suddenly, Zheng Xuan called Su Lingli because she wanted to go shopping. However, the guy reminded her that he was showing the school to Huang Ji. Huang Ji, hearing the conversation, asks not to worry about him, and that let the guy go out with Su Lingli. Huang Ji confesses that he has already memorized the way and that he can handle it all by himself. It's usually after such convincing words that some disaster happens. Zheng Xuan decided to believe the guy, but asked him to call him immediately if anything happens. After freeing himself from Zheng Xuan's scrutiny, the guy decided to verify the information. A short time later, he returned to his apartment in the Platinum House. This time, he assured himself that he had learned his lesson and would not fall for any more scams. He decided to search the internet for information on how to stimulate acupuncture points throughout the body without acupuncture or cauterization. Suddenly, he saw the answer to his question, for someone was offering to teach him how to practice martial arts. Huang Ji was surprised when he saw the information about martial arts. Incidentally, just less than a minute ago, he had assured that he would not fall for the tricks of scammers again. Just how deep will the guy go in his research, and when will he already have a phone conversation with the real scammers who will tell him that all is not well with his grandfather? I take back what I said earlier. After reading the beginning of the story in the novel, I understood the story a little better than when I read the manhwa. They oversimplify things in the manhwa, so there are even more questions than when you read the novel. Guy had heard of martial arts. Martial arts, also known as martial arts, was a skill that originated in ancient times and was inherited until the present day. According to legend, all martial arts masters possess special techniques. Some masters possess strength several times that of an ordinary person. Other masters are able to soar through the sky without leaving a trace or shadow. Some masters even possess immense power in wielding a blade. All these thoughts of martial arts made him go back to memories from his childhood. When he was a kid, his grandfather often talked about how tough he was when he was young, but the kid knew very well now that it was nothing more than simple bragging. Most of the information that was known was just the usual book stories. The martial arts themselves were techniques that increased the stamina of the body. Huang Ji doesn't learn anything and decides to ask around about martial arts on the internet. He wonders if it is true that there is qi in the human body, and he was also curious to know how qi is related to the body, since he had only heard about it from novels. The local expert told him that the books had exaggerated everything, but that they had qi. He thought it was a fact. Huang Ji immediately wanted to know if the guy was using qi. The martial arts expert explains to the inexperienced youngster that it's basically all about proper breathing, and also that you need to inhale and exhale, mixing qi with the energy of your body, and in addition, you need to practice in the evening. When Huang Ji tried to find out why it was necessary to train in the evening, he was told that it was because of the stars, that they emitted special energy. Huang Ji didn't quite understand the explanation. He thought that the stars also emitted their energy during the day. However, it was quickly pointed out to him that he didn't know anything, and his interlocutor was already a cultivator with 10 years of training from a famous master, so the interlocutor had a lot of power. Huang Ji couldn't stop pestering the experienced cultivator, wondering what the cultivator did for a living. The cultivator said that he was currently a businessman and practiced martial arts for his health. Huang Ji was not a simple guy and immediately reminded the cultivator that he had previously mentioned that he was a government employee. The cultivator immediately admitted that he had quit his job and now had his own business. Huang Ji pointed out that the guy in front of him was bragging and that he was only 20 years old. Right after that, the great cultivator deleted his account. Only now did the guy realize that asking for help on the internet for this kind of thing wouldn't really work. Huang Ji once again became a hacker and broke into the great cultivator's computer. He was even amused that such a braggart was actually a true martial arts enthusiast, as Huang Ji found over 100 martial arts-related videos and illustrations on his computer. Some explanations about the body's weaknesses in martial arts seemed quite accurate to him. Unfortunately, pretty quickly the guy began to realize that no one understood the basics of the human body better than he did. After learning about Qigong, he couldn't understand how anyone could trust such information, considering it to be complete nonsense. Just at this moment, he received a phone call from Zheng Xuan. He asked if the guy was already home, as they were about to return home. Huang Ji said that he had gone out for a walk and that he would be back soon. Zheng Xuan thought it was better not to share such information with the girl. However, Su Lingli heard everything and was angry that Zheng Xuan was going to keep something from her. Soon, Su Lingli and Zheng Xuan returned home with their new purchases from the stores. Su Lingli immediately went to Huang Ji's room. She asked him how he was doing in his new place and if he was eating right. Huang Ji remarked that Zheng Xuan was taking good care of him. Noticing a lot of books in the room, she noted that the guy seems to be working hard. Even Zheng Xuan had told her that the guy reads a lot. Huang Ji confessed to her that he wasn't into reading before, so he decided to take up the activity now. She was happy that the guy was so hard-working and diligent, she even felt like telling his grandfather about it. However, Su Lingli reminded the guy that studying also needed a rest, so she decided that they should all go out for dinner together, all at Zheng Xuan's expense, of course. Huang Ji wanted to refuse, but Zheng Xuan remarked that it was useless to try to refuse. After that, they went out to rest, eat and drink, happily celebrating Huang Ji's arrival in the city. After they returned home, Zheng Xuan noticed that he and his girlfriend needed some privacy, so he advised the guy to rest or study on his own for now. Huang Ji immediately took the hint. An innocent guy like Huang Ji immediately blushed all red since he wouldn't turn off his ability to read minds before and heard something he wished he hadn't heard. Once inside the room and settled on the bed, the guy complained that he didn't have a computer in this house. However, he had his phone, so he decided to look up information on Qi. Martial arts were good, but Qigong seemed too mystical to him. At this moment, he heard sounds from the next room that he absolutely did not want to hear. With a completely red face, he even complained that the house had incredibly poor soundproofing, as if the walls were made of cardboard. However, upon checking the walls, he verified that there was nothing wrong with them, and that the soundproofing of the walls was 50 decibels. He remembered that apparently his course of acupuncture and cauterization had strengthened his physical condition, so his hearing had probably improved as well. Trying to look through the wall, the guy noticed that he now seemed to have access to the ability to control the flow of information he was receiving. However, now he could clearly see the ions that came from the friction of bodies and spread through the air. At that moment it seemed to hit him, for ions were electricity, bioelectricity. As he tried to lie down on the bed, he pondered the fact that the human body is filled with countless electrochemical molecules, whether thinking or interacting between organs, and are not separable from electrical impulses. And what keeps biological activity going is electricity, which is an electrochemical signal that transmits the will of the brain to all parts of the body. The heat needed to release bioelectricity is generated by the body's cells. He now had a slightly better understanding of the subject and realized that the word Qigong had been misleading him all along, and the easiest way to explain it was with the word electricity. In addition, he realized that there was no qi flow in the human body at all, and the meridians were just a dozen major pathways with a relatively large volume of transition. Acupuncture points and hidden nodes were the direction of life energy. The meridians and acupuncture points of ordinary people are accessible by themselves, so it's impossible to open them, otherwise people would be paralyzed. In other words, everyone is born with inner talents. After putting the whole puzzle together, the guy realized that cultivation was actually aimed at increasing stamina. The higher the stamina, the greater the internal strength or electric field. The stronger they were, the stronger the skills a person would have. As long as the electric field can penetrate another person's body, their lifeline can be easily cut, causing all sorts of internal damage. For example, with a single palm strike, one could deprive an opponent of kidney function. As he digested all the information he had received, he noticed that although martial arts skills and stamina were very strong, only a few of them included exercises to control the energy in the body. Their internal energy utilization rate is only 4.57% for Tai Chi and 3.64% for Xingyi. But the two best martial arts combined, the utilization rate can be increased to 16%. All of this got the guy thinking about how he could come up with his own way to combine his hundreds of strengths combined with the concepts of hidden acupuncture points and bioelectricity to create a unique technique. This assignment was the first step he needed to take to cope with the aliens, so even though the path was quite difficult, he needed to give his best effort to achieve the goal. 2 weeks had passed since the day he had succeeded in discovering the secret of electrical energy. Now he was constantly absorbing all the knowledge contained in the books, like a sponge caught in a bucket of water. Even though he had thoroughly studied the books on medicine and biology available in the bookstore, as well as various valuable collections of online stores, it was becoming increasingly difficult for him to acquire new knowledge as his knowledge level continued to increase. He had even already managed to find a mouse for experiments somewhere. He regretted that his research into electrical energy had encountered obstacles. After all, the tiny discharge of current was not even enough to harm a human being, let alone knock out a mouse. Looking at the little mouse, the guy decided it was time for him to finish his book's learning. What happened next to the poor little mouse? After that, the guy went outside, deciding that now was the time to go to the experts. Jiang Wan and Li Wei were the experts who were seeing patients today. One was in room 204 and the other was in room 305. He decided to visit them one by one. Jiang Wan was a woman of 35 years old. The global medical skill rating was 247,608. It surprised him that a pathology expert was ranked so low in global medical skills. Li Wei is a male 37 years old. Global ranking in medical skills 170,083. This kind of information also surprised the guy. After all, he didn't expect that they had a rather low rating. After that, he couldn't help but start praising himself. The guy was not a professional, but only engaged in self-education for 2 weeks, and already felt that he had reached a global rating of 510,816. He began to praise himself, because if people found out about this, medical students all over the world would be turned inside out. He decided to go Li Wei first, so he went to make an appointment with the doctor through the terminal. An hour later, it was finally his turn, so number 48 Huang Ji was asked to come into the room. When the guy entered the room, he saw that the doctor's global rating had dropped to 170,912. In just 1 hour, the doctor's rating had dropped so drastically, which greatly surprised the guy. Noticing the guy's stare, the doctor asked if there were any problems, but the guy immediately pointed out that there were no problems. Huang Ji was well aware that the information was updated in real time and that the ratings were constantly changing every minute and every second. Therefore, he understood that it wasn't that Li Wei's skill level had decreased at all, but that over 800 doctors around the world had surpassed Li Wei in the past hour. The doctor immediately wanted to check the patient's cardiopulmonary function, so he asked to lift the patient's shirt higher. Taking a stethoscope in his hands, he began to listen to the patient's breathing. Just at this moment, Huang Ji decided that it was time to gain new knowledge. Looking at Li Wei, he was going to learn all the information from clinical study reports that couldn't be read in ordinary books, as well as articles that could only be found in universities. He was glad because fast face-to-face data transfer was the best thing ever. He could even obtain the knowledge that Li Wei had missed. He hadn't been able to do something like this before, but now he was beyond that. Combined with the previous acupuncture and cauterization treatments, it greatly strengthened his cardiopulmonary function and improved his blood supply and the efficiency of oxygen supply to his brain. Now his brain's information processing capacity is 1.25 times that of a normal person. Li Wei, meanwhile, noticed that the guy's heart muscle was quite strong, and his lung volume was also large, and his breathing was long. The doctor thought that the guy in front of him was an athlete, but he didn't hear anything wrong when examining the guy. He inquired if the guy was all right and if he felt any discomfort. Huang Ji admits that he constantly feels that his breathing is too heavy, that he hears a rapid heartbeat, and every time he thinks about it, he gets a panicky feeling that he is about to die. However, the doctor noticed that the guy's heart is in good condition. Huang Ji seems to have overreacted, as the doctor even considered advising the guy to go to the psychiatry department. In the end, the doctor decided that the guy should have had a chest X-ray first and then a blood test to rule out a respiratory infection. He told the guy to go to the service desk on the second floor to pay the bill and then bring the chest X-ray. The guy's whole body seemed to shimmer. He thanked the doctor while he was glad that he had managed to absorb almost all of the doctor's experience. Turning his attention back to the doctor, the guy noticed that the doctor's global rating had dropped to 171,998. Looking immediately at his global ranking, the guy was incredibly shocked. So he had risen to 45,233rd place. This rate of progress was astonishing even to him. Not only did he gain knowledge from the doctor, but he also learned a lot about the doctor's past. Li Wei was originally a promising doctor of medicine. However, because Li Wei insulted the dean, he was transferred to the outpatient department, and as a result, his psyche was greatly affected. The man had stayed in the regular clinic for too long. As a result, he gradually lost his professionalism as a doctor, which in turn affected his judgment and self-confidence, so it was not surprising that his professional ranking dropped so much. Huang Ji recalled that Zheng Xuan had recently been reading books related to economics and was also busy with translations, so he had no time to keep up with new technologies on the internet, so his ranking in the world of hackers had also dropped by more than 2,000 points. Such a sad state of affairs made Zheng Xuan quite angry. The guy began to realize more that learning was like swimming against the current, that if you don't advance, then you retreat. The whole world was constantly changing. The information made it clear that there was no way to relax. The guy learned another important thing from the doctor. Every person has his own up period, peak period, and fatigue period. Even a great physicist like Einstein only had a certain period of time to actively put forward outstanding ideas and scientific achievements. Huang Ji was curious to use his ability to determine from observable information what period of life a person was in. Suddenly, he saw a man who was standing in a traffic jam. The man had already started shouting impatiently to the cars ahead of him because he wanted to go as fast as possible. The guy decided to observe the man. Just by looking at the man, Huang Ji learned that the man was going to participate in his company's monthly performance appraisal. But as soon as he was late, the manager publicly humiliated him, causing him to lose his reputation. However, the guy noticed that the man hasn't lost everything yet, and he will soon reach his peak in life. Such a large layer of information gave the guy an immediate headache. He felt that it seemed to be an overload of information. He was surprised that he had even predicted the man's future. But immediately he realized that it was just the result of an inference, the most probable tendency of development based on the available information. The guy was well aware that the future was not predetermined, neither was the medical skill rating, so it could change in the next second. Deciding to conduct an experiment, Huang Ji insulted the already irritable man who was clearly not in a friendly mood today. The man was surprised to be teased by some kid. He was about to get out of the car and teach the youngster a lesson, but Huang Ji immediately ran away. The man was shocked at what a disgusting day he had had today, that even the schoolboy was now allowing himself to look down on him. Looking from around the corner, the guy noticed that it wasn't the man's fault that the guy had insulted him. In fact, Huang Ji managed to notice that the man in the original version would become complacent after reaching his peak, stop working hard, and put more energy into scheming, which would cause the man to fall. Huang Ji, being a random passerby, noticed and decided to help the man. His unceremonious insult greatly prolonged the growth phase of the man's career. According to new predictions, in 3 years, the man would be among the top 30,000 in the world computer industry, and then start to slowly decline. Huang Ji was surprised that just one word could dramatically change a life. He now understood even more the value and power of information, so he began to get more and more curious about where this path would lead him. He wondered how great the possibilities of perfecting the magical ability he had obtained were. While resting on a bench and eating, he wondered if he would be able to predict his future. Suddenly, everything around him disintegrated into many sheets of paper, and various ink appeared around him. The guy got scared, not realizing what was happening to him, trying to stop his attempt to predict his future as soon as possible. After a moment, he managed to snap back to reality. He couldn't understand what had just happened to him. He only remembered seeing pictures that had his image painted on them. However, after a moment, he interpreted that he perceived all the information in the world, so his future was constantly changing, as well as the future of the people around him. The guy began to realize that he wasn't very good at his skills yet. He decided that he would only do something about it after he had fully mastered his ability. Society closely connects people to each other, so sometimes any fleeting thought or random event can greatly change the direction of the future. Therefore, the shorter the prediction interval, the more useful it is to use the prediction ability. Conversely, the longer the time interval, the more deviations occur. But all this only applied to individual ones, and if the object of prediction was the entire world, it was much more complicated. He didn't know if it would be possible to predict the fate of the entire humanity. However, he wondered what awaited humanity if aliens suddenly appeared. Hard life and questions to which he had no answer and no one to discuss them with without going to a psychiatric hospital. Maybe he's in the Matrix. That's why he can read all the data. Neo, time to wake up. What if all this time the guy's actually in a coma? For now, he was enjoying a peaceful year and beautiful weather. However, the guy knew that in just 5 years, a war would break out in the West that would be incredibly destructive. In 10 years, the economy of the United States of America was also going to collapse. Suddenly, he was incredibly scared when he got to the year 2045. At that point, a blue sun would suddenly appear. The consequences would be incredibly devastating, as the strong radiation would wipe out 99% of the species of living things on Earth. Huang Ji could not understand what would lead to such an event. As he pondered the future, he realized that it would not be an explosion of the moon or an alien fleet invasion. But somehow humanity and almost all living things would be destroyed by radiation. The sun won't explode, destroying the Earth. It will just change its color to blue. Human beings will not be able to resist the strong light and will simply die. This incident would happen too suddenly, so it was important for the guy to see if he could avoid this incident in the future. One option was to find a way to unite all the countries and then concentrate the full power of humanity to solve the problem. With his abilities, he saw no problem as he could develop incredibly fast. Huang Ji once again tried to focus on the events of 2045. The sun was literally showering the entire Earth with powerful comets that people couldn't dodge. He couldn't believe that such a thing was possible, much less that there was a solution to such a problem. Suddenly, he heard someone calling him. Opening his eyes, he noticed that there was a blonde man in front of him who was calling him. Huang Ji asked the blonde guy if he had been unconscious for a long time. The blonde guy reported that the guy had been unconscious for about 5 or 6 minutes. He even offered to call Huang Ji an ambulance. Huang Ji asked him not to call an ambulance, but simply reported that he hadn't had much rest lately. Huang Ji began to realize that the information load had caught him off guard again, so he decided that it was too early for him to walk around the city yet. Huang Ji wanted to avoid such a gigantic flow of information in the future. The blonde asked Huang Ji to take care of his health because nowadays young people don't take care of themselves at all, and they also have school. Huang Ji thanked the blonde man for his concern. In gratitude, Huang Ji told the blonde man to rest more and check his health. The guy didn't understand what Huang Ji was talking about, as he felt incredibly healthy. Unfortunately, Huang Ji could see the man's health information at a glance. He noticed that there was a cancerous tumor growing in the guy's body, and even though the guy felt fine now, in a few years, the disease would worsen and the guy would die. For the treatment to be successful, the cancerous tumor had to be removed in the next 2 months, or else it would be too late. The blonde man wondered why the guy was looking at him so intently. Huang Ji was still immersed in his thoughts, realizing that if he didn't do anything, the blonde guy would just die. Suddenly, he saw a further development that horrified him. He got up from the bench, informing him that he was just saying that about the guy's health. The blonde man even thought that Huang Ji was kind of weird. Huang Ji said goodbye to the guy, advising the guy to remember to pick up his phone. The blonde man didn't understand what the guy was saying to him or what phone he was talking about at all. However, Huang Ji, like a hereditary fortune teller, thought that Lin Li would soon realize everything. The blonde man looked at the guy leaving and thought that he was strange. Soon, Huang Ji returned to the Platinum House. Sitting at his desk and looking at the computer monitor, he pondered over the future events he could see. In just 5 years, the world could be on the brink of destruction. The guy realized that if he intervened, he could not only delay, but also bring the imminent. So he wanted to approach this issue carefully prepared and not making rash actions. While in the first scenario, they would be under attack from the blue sun, in the second scenario, an alien invasion may already be underway. Aliens are very well aware and will quickly be able to react to any changes in the situation on Earth. They will surely take action to destroy the undeveloped human civilization. He realized that in the eyes of the aliens, humans were nothing more than tasty food. As soon as the aliens realized that the food was resisting, the humans would be destroyed immediately. Huang Ji pounded the table with his right hand in anger. The only thing he could do was complain that the aliens would just take and destroy all living things whenever they wanted. They would wait for the humans to kill each other themselves, or they would do it first. The guy hoped the aliens wouldn't do anything about it. He even thought about the fact that if the aliens realized that he knew too much, they wouldn't dare to attack. All the information he had gotten only made the guy angrier, and he couldn't find a way out of the situation. For a moment he thought about his grandfather and everyone else he knew. Remembering that the fate of mankind depends on him, he wanted to calm down first. After all, if he approached the issue with a cool head, a way out could be found. He wanted to calculate everything and plan step by step. In the end, Huang Ji decided to think of something pleasant to distract himself for a while. He was happy that today he was able to gain the ability to see the future, and that he would soon be able to learn another new, unique technique. Huang Ji lay down on the bed and began to think about how he could strengthen his body. Relying on the summarized information of future observations and then using hundreds of essences, he felt that he would soon be able to integrate a set of the most advanced exercises and strength techniques ever. The guy decided to make his own destiny. What determines the fate of mankind in this world? Meanwhile, on Taste Street in Magic City, a blonde guy walked into one of the buildings and immediately greeted his teacher. The teacher also greeted the guy and asked him to sit down with him and eat soup. Lin Li showed the teacher a bag of water that contained the goldfish that the teacher had asked him to bring. The teacher was even surprised that the guy had brought such expensive goldfish. However, Lin Li believed that as long as the teacher could help him with his cultivation, then money didn't matter. The teacher cheerfully remarked that cultivating a gold pill was not an easy task. He even complained that his years would soon come to an end, so there was too little time left. However, the teacher felt that he would be able to help the lad. Plus, he promised that after absorbing the pill, the guy would become incredibly strong. Lin Li immediately stood up. He was so happy that he couldn't hide his emotions. His teacher, on the other hand, advised him not to worry so much and behave with more restraint. He reprimanded his student for such behavior, noting that now he was not surprised that the guy could not cross the threshold of QI purification for a long time, thinking that the guy was still too far away from perfection. Lin Li began to apologize to the teacher again. He asked the guy to practice meditation for 3 days, and only then could the guy go back to him again. The teacher didn't understand why the guy went to pay the bill. However, Lin Li still wanted to pay it. The teacher even started reminding the guy that he had told him many times that he didn't want anything from the guy. Besides, the teacher thought that the guy would not be able to earn money for the pill because of such behaviors. Lin Li had known the teacher for about a month, but except for buying fish and some medicine, he hadn't asked Lin Li for anything else financially. The blonde guy realized that he didn't have to please the teacher, but he still wanted to help the teacher at least this way. The guy thought the teacher was cool. After all, the teacher was helping him to advance his cultivation. In the end, Lin Li decided to leave and go back to meditating. Suddenly, 3 pumped-up men with scars on their faces entered the restaurant. They happily noted that they had finally found the old man. The main one of the 3 men told the old man to return the money immediately. However, the old man showed no reaction. He even reminded Li Quan that he had kicked the boss's ass last time. Li Quan was not in the mood for jokes, and he told the old man to immediately give back the 100,000 yuan that belonged to the boss. The teacher nevertheless cheekily stated that he had indeed taken the money, but he had already given it to charity. Li Quan realized that the old man was not going to give the money back nicely, so he decided to beat the money out of the old man. The old man only laughed, calling Li Quan and the others idiots. He hugged his disciple, telling him that today he would show him what true anger looked like. The old man told the guy to watch as the people in front of him would get what they deserved. The old man then pushed the guy forward, telling him to attack the men. Lin Li, after such a rousing speech from the teacher, even got brave and lunged at the men with his fists. However, Lin Li was instantly punished for such a reckless attack as Li Quan mercilessly beat him up. Lifting the guy by the scruff of the neck with one hand, Li Quan stared at him, not understanding what it all meant. The others managed to notice that the old man had escaped. They even started complaining that the blonde man was to blame for the old man's escape. This kind of information pissed Li Quan off, and he threw the blonde man into the wall with force. Only now did Lin Li realize that the old man had deceived him, that the golden pill and purification. It was all a deception on the old man's part. He self-deprecatingly remarked that it was his own fault for believing in all those fairy tales. The guy just wanted to be something special. The blonde revisited the old man's personality again, noting that the old man turned out to be a good actor. After all, he even treated the guy at the cafe, even though the guy himself had spent a lot of money on cultivation materials. Lin Li felt no self-pity, blaming himself for falling for the old man's entreaties and therefore getting what he deserved. Grabbing the guy by the hair, Li Quan asked the guy if he was the old man's disciple. Lin Li admitted that he too had been tricked and that he didn't know anything. However, this answer did not satisfy Li Quan, and he told the guy not to lie to him. Lin Li continued to insist that he didn't know anything. Li Quan decided to take a different course of action. He was going to film the beaten guy to post the video on the internet, wanting to embarrass the guy. Lin Li realized that all the trouble was because of 100,000 yuan. The blonde guy said that he didn't have that much money with him, so he could write a receipt. The most important thing for him was to get out of this place alive. Li Quan was finally pleased, as he was happy to see such an intelligent person, and then told someone to bring a pen and paper. Suddenly the guy got a call on his cell phone. He even asked if he could answer the call. Li Quan let the guy answer the call but told him not to pull any tricks. Once the blonde guy answered the call and said hello, the stranger told the guy not to ask who he was. The stranger informed the guy that the restaurant's power would be shut off in 20 seconds, so the stranger asked the guy to run away during that time. The stranger also asked the guy to leave his wallet behind, as the guy would get his wallet back later. Lin Li was surprised and didn't understand what was even going on. The poor guy is seriously ill, and the crook is also scamming him by profiting from his grief. What will Lin Li's acquaintance with Huang Ji lead to? The stranger told the blonde man to end the call in 3 seconds, pretending it would be a commercial call. The stranger immediately started counting down from 3 to 1. The guy started to improvise as if the call had been interrupted. Li Quan asked him who was calling him. Lin Li turned on all his acting skills, saying that the insurance agents called, but for some reason they dropped the call. Li Quan's patience was running out, so sitting down on a chair, he told the guy to write a receipt. Taking a pen and notepad, Lin Li continued his internal countdown to the event he needed. Suddenly the lights went out in the restaurant. The men couldn't understand why it was so dark and how the electricity could have gone out. In the darkness, they started pushing each other. They soon managed to get outside, but they had time to notice that the blonde man had escaped. Li Quan did not understand where they should go next now. One of his men saw that the guy ran to the right. Li Quan and the other men were incredibly angry, intending to deal with the guy. Huang Ji, meanwhile, was already waiting for the guy in one of the dark alleys of the city. Staggering from side to side, Lin Li continued to run as far as possible. At this moment, Huang Ji placed his left hand on his shoulder. From such a sudden touch on his shoulder, Lin Li was startled and almost cried. Being on the ground because his legs gave out and he fell down, Lin Li was surprised to see the newly met guy. Huang Ji tried to calm the guy down. He asked the guy not to worry because pumped-up men were no longer chasing him. Lin Li breathed a sigh of relief that no one was chasing him anymore. Suddenly he realized that he had heard the guy's voice before and that he was the one who had called him recently. Huang Ji confirmed his hunch and also returned the guy's belongings back to him as the rightful owner. Lin Li was incredibly happy. He thanked the guy since he had saved his life. Huang Ji asked the guy not to exaggerate because the blonde man's problems were actually nothing. Huang Ji asked the blonde guy why he didn't go to the police. Lin Li decided to confess that he couldn't do so because the university would immediately find out, and then he would be finished. Huang Ji couldn't understand the guy's logic. The guy was willing to go into debt for 100,000 yuan to give the money to the bandits instead of going to the police. However, Lin Li was a kind guy, so he immediately expressed his gratitude to Huang Ji for getting him out of such a mess. He immediately introduced himself, saying that his name was Lin Li, and also if the guy needed any help, he would always help him. However, Huang Ji told him to follow him. Lin Li did not understand where the guy was taking him. Huang Ji only replied cryptically that Lin Li would soon find out when he would lead him. Lin Li decided to inquire about the guy's name and his number to write down. Huang Ji didn't make up anything and immediately admitted that his name was Huang Ji, but he asked that the guy not write down his name anywhere. When the blonde guy wondered how to write down the guy on his phone, then Huang Ji told him to write it down as Hua Shu. Only now Lin Li asked the guy how he knew his phone number. Huang Ji decided not to reveal all his cards yet, so he explained that the guy had called him an ambulance in the afternoon, so he asked for his phone number at the hospital. Looking at Huang Ji's back, Lin Li noticed that the guy's gait and footsteps were somehow special. There was some rhythm in them that he couldn't fully realize and describe. The blonde man could feel how gracefully and elegantly the guy in front of him moved. He made the far-reaching assumption that perhaps now he had finally met a true master. Rubbing his nose with his left hand, he continued to admire the guy's interesting footsteps. Huang Ji, who could read the thoughts of others, was slightly surprised at how keen the blonde man's eye was, as he was able to notice the features of his new technique. The Universal Inner Sutra is a set of techniques that he developed today. The set of techniques consists of 3 sets of exercises. The first set is breathing and body movements that can be practiced while walking. The abdomen moves in time with the steps, which regulates the breath. Special points of effort harmonize the work of internal organs. With proper practice, it prolongs life. On the way to the appointed place, Huang Ji practiced for an hour and felt that his life was prolonged by 5 hours. He realized that it was not always possible to achieve such a result, because everything depended on the exact execution. But even so, in terms of prolonging life, it was already enough. The second complex coordinates the work of all body systems and hormones, as well as removes toxins and toxins. The second complex of exercises allows him to effectively train his body, and thanks to the precise control of his internal organs, he will be able to quickly remove any poison from his body unless the poison kills instantly. The third complex increases sensitivity to biocurrents, improves nervous system response, and sensory acuity. Pain occurs when the body receives irritation, sends biocurrents to the brain, and the brain, in turn, affects neurotransmitters, increases the concentration of certain hormones, which causes various sensations understandable to the human consciousness. From this theory, it followed that people with low sensitivity to biocurrents are prone to neurasthenia, numbness, lethargy. Conversely, people with high sensitivity have high reactions and sharp senses. According to the guy's calculations, if he practiced all 3 sets of exercises for 8,000 hours, he would be able to freely control the biocurrents in his body and achieve 100% efficiency, like a perpetual motion machine. However, he felt that it was still not enough. Huang Ji thought that achieving perfection in the matter was incredibly difficult. Even though he was constantly adjusting his actions based on the information he received, his completion rate was only 13%, and that was in a calm environment. And with the slightest interference, he couldn't do anything at all. In addition, 8,000 hours was almost a year of continuous practice, and in reality it would take at least 2.5 years. He was extremely dissatisfied with this fact, because it was too slow. The guy decided to work on time efficiency later. After a while, Huang Ji informed Lin Li that they had finally arrived. Lin Li was surprised to see his master. Huang Ji told the old man to return the gold immediately. The old man was slightly surprised. Was the guy really addressing him? Lin Li ran up to the old man and grabbed him by the collar. He started complaining that the old man was a crook and was giving him trouble. The old man asked the guys not to push, as he had a heart condition. However, the guys were unwilling to believe another of the old man's ravings. The old man called Huang Ji too harsh since he decided to stand up for the blonde man. The old man turned his attention to Huang Ji. He said that Huang Ji seemed to be from the north and that his physique was quite strong, which meant that he must have worked in the fields. The old man wondered how much land Huang Ji's family owned. The blond man asked Huang Ji not to fall for the old man's tricks, as he himself had suffered because of this rogue. Huang Ji asked Lin Li to let him deal with the old man. Huang Ji took a seat on a chair and stated that his family only had 20 acres of land. The old man was polite, thinking that the guy must have had a hard time without his parents. Huang Ji confessed that he missed his parents very much. Although they passed away early in life, he would always remember their faces. Lin Li was quick to notice that the old rogue had guessed everything about him so accurately as well. He first assumed that the old man had originally learned all the information about him, but now he saw that the old man knew the information about Huang Ji as well. Even though this was also the first time he was meeting him, he sadly remarked that it looked like the old man was about to swallow Huang Ji's information. The old man calmly gobbled down the food and noted that the guy seemed to love his family very much, but nevertheless he had good reasons for leaving his remaining relatives. Huang Ji confessed that he left home for the sake of studying. The old man understood that a person sometimes had to make sacrifices for his future. He immediately realized that even though the lad lacked education, his physical attributes could compensate for this deficiency. The old man asked the guy to practice, and then he could shut up all the malcontents around him. Blondie wondered what the old man would say about Huang Ji. He also wondered what Huang Ji did for a living. The old man thought that the guy was just a student who was an athlete. He thought that the guy would make a living with his feet. The guy was a little disappointed with the old man's answer because the old man assumed that the guy was from a sports school and a track and field athlete who came to Shanghai to study under the sports quota. The old man didn't really like the guy's answer. Huang Ji confessed that he had dropped out long ago and had never practiced athletics. He had only come to Shanghai to get his diploma. Now it was his turn to explain to the old man about life. He informed that the old man was 52 years old, and he was still going to go with the flow. He also didn't really like the man telling everyone that he used to be a policeman. Huang Ji didn't understand why the old man was wasting all his skills on fraud and deception. The old man didn't show any surprise. He stated that he had never been a policeman. However, the old man had messed with the wrong person. Huang Ji immediately pointed out to the old man that the old man probably didn't remember and was also afraid that his past would come out. The guy even stated that the old man must not have had a sweet time abroad since he decided to come back. He also hinted that the old man seems to have stolen something abroad and now powerful people are after him. The old man's hand shook at this moment. Huang Ji reminded the old man that he was in desperate need of money, but was afraid of being discovered by people looking for him. The old man was wanted by people you'd better not mess with, so the old man even hid under a false name. The guy didn't understand why the old man started deceiving students. Besides, the old man had a son about the same age as Lin Li. At this moment, the old man could no longer contain his emotions. He inquired how the guy knew that he had a son. Huang Ji decided to inform that he had just learned cold reading from the old man. The old man didn't understand at all what cold reading the guy was suddenly talking about. The old man's face was covered in cold sweat when he stated that the current youth was incredibly talented. Cold reading is when you can read what's going on in a person's head and what happened to them by facial expressions, body language, manner of speech, and other details. And then you skillfully give in, play along, guide, and make the person believe that you know everything about him. Huang Ji immediately realized that the old man's cold reading skills were at a high level, so he couldn't just be picked apart. Fortunately, Huang Ji was not a simple guy himself. The information in his perception was true. He didn't need to use cold reading. The old man noticed that the guy seemed to be a master of cold reading indeed. Sadly, he realized that it looked like he wouldn't be able to turn away so easily today. He also feared that the guy might be related to the organization that was after him. Getting up from the table, the old man told the guys that the battle could not be avoided. Lin Li was indignant at the old man's behavior, for the old man thought that the two of them would not be able to cope with him. Suddenly, the old man called out to old Ma, and a big man wearing an apron came out to them. The old man declared that they were together. Lin Li thought that the cafeteria owner was in cahoots with the old man. However, at this moment, he noticed that the old man had once again diverted their attention and ran away. Just as he was about to set off in pursuit of the old man, old Ma grabbed the guy by the scruff of the neck. He declared that the blonde guy was in league with the old man, and since the old man hadn't paid, the blonde guy should pay for the old man. Huang Ji immediately walked over to Old Ma and paid for the food. Old Ma was happy that it was over so easily and wished that the guys would come to his establishment some more. Lin Li was unhappy that the old man had tricked him again. The old man runs quite fast for his age. It seems his only skill is running away. After paying the owner of the street eatery, the guys ran after the old man. Huang Ji noted that the old man couldn't run far and they would catch up with him soon. There was no way the old man could get away from the guys chasing him. As he ran past the house, he knocked on the first-floor window. As soon as the guys ran past the house, the window opened sharply, so the owner of the house was going to find out who was knocking there. However, the know-it-all grabbed the blonde's head with his hand and tilted it down so that the blonde miraculously dodged the opening window. The old man continued his attempts to escape from the guys chasing him, and just at that moment he saw a bicycle. The old man climbed on the bicycle, hoping that the bicycle would allow him to get away from his pursuers. However, the old man was frightened and didn't notice that the bicycle had no seat at all, so he sat down on the iron. The old man wailed in pain and fell to the ground. At that moment he even cried. The guys managed to get to the old man and watched his agony. With gangster faces, they stared at the old man. Huang Ji even teased the old man that he would hardly be able to run so fast anymore. Standing up from the ground, the old man, even though he felt pain, realized that the guy in front of him was not so simple, so he was going to come up with an escape plan as soon as possible. Suddenly, a brilliant idea came into the old man's head. The guys somehow managed to lose sight of the old man, who was barely able to move. At that moment, the old man was sitting in a dumpster. The guys decided to look elsewhere. Sitting in the dumpster, the old man wondered if he could get out and if the guys had left. He couldn't stand the stench coming from the trash anymore and opened the dumpster lid. Unfortunately for the old man, the guys were standing in front of the dumpster. Huang Ji began to tease the old man again, saying that he was so scared of them that he even hid in the dumpster. Lin Li also plucked up his courage, declaring that the old man could no longer escape from them and that he had better hand over the money. The old man deftly climbed out of the dumpster. He declared that he would not run away because he couldn't escape from such guys anyway. Brushing off the trash, the old man wondered how the guys knew he was hiding in the dumpster. Huang Ji asked the old man to guess what he was holding in his hand. The old man guessed that the guy was holding a seashell. Huang Ji confidently stated that he was holding a piece of a mollusk shell. The ground around the porridge stall where they were standing was littered with fragments of a mollusk shell, and many of them had stuck to the old man's soles. While they were chasing the old man, he noticed many such fragments, but as soon as they turned onto this street, the shell fragments suddenly disappeared. However, there were a few shell fragments lying next to the dumpster, which is why he thought the old man had climbed into the dumpster. After the guy said that, the old man was incredibly frightened, thinking that the guy's observation skills were like those of a maniac. In fact, Huang Ji decided to give such explanations to make everything look logical. He couldn't admit that the dumpster had given him the idea. Lin Li blushed at that moment. He hadn't noticed anything, and his new brother was so cool. It was an unremarkable dumpster. The dumpster was filled with useless household waste, and it was into it that the old man had climbed a few minutes ago. The old man fell to his knees, declaring that he was giving up. The old man's actions were not surprising, as he realized that he was dealing with a maniac. No longer trying to escape, the old man handed the guys the materials he had used to trick Lin Li. He admitted that he had already spent the money the guy had given him and had no cash left. Therefore, he decided to give the guy his watch, stating that it was worth 2,000 yuan, so it could serve as collateral for the guy for the time being. Huang Ji glanced at the watch and immediately declared that it was not worth 2,000 yuan. He quickly determined that the old man had given them a second-hand watch that cost about 200 yuan. Suddenly, Huang Ji told the old man that he had decided to put the deception aside for now. Now he wanted to talk to the old man about serious matters. The old man did not understand what other serious matters the guy wanted to talk to him about. Well, since the guy had decided to leave the debt in the past, the old man was going to run away as quickly as possible. Looking at his back, the guy asked the old man when he had last visited his son at the cemetery. The old man immediately tensed up and asked the guy point-blank who he was. Huang Ji was not embarrassed in the least and made the old man an enticing offer. He asked the old man if he wanted to avenge his son. The old man realized that he was in serious trouble and that those people had tracked him down after all. He decided to act first and tried to kick the guy, but then he suddenly struck Lin Li with his hand when he covered Huang Ji with his body. And then he instantly kicked Lin Li in the chest with his left foot. The guy literally began to vomit blood. He asked Huang Ji not to pay attention to him and to catch up with the old man. Huang Ji asked the guy not to worry about the old man, but to calm down and catch his breath first. He immediately took out his acupuncture kit from thin air. Then he pricked one of the guy's acupuncture points. Lin Li noticed that he felt better. He was surprised that Huang Ji knew how to do acupuncture. For the first time in a long time, Huang Ji showed himself to be a modest person, noting that he knew very little about acupuncture. After that, Huang Ji caught a taxi. The guy couldn't understand where Huang Ji was going, but Huang Ji was going to continue chasing the old man. Lin Li also wanted to go after the old man. However, Huang Ji rejected Lin Li's idea. He said that from now on, it was his business with the old man. He already had the items, so Huang Ji didn't want the guy to go with him and get himself into trouble. With confidence in his eyes, he declared that there are things in a man's life that can cost a man his life if you get involved in them. Lin Li immediately detected contradictions in Huang Ji's words because at that time Huang Ji's life was in danger. He was going to go with Huang Ji because in the first place it all started because of him, and together they would definitely do better. Surprisingly, Huang Ji did not try to persuade the guy to stay away and not go with him. He even told the guy to get in the car if he was ready for danger. As soon as they got into the taxi, Lin Li asked Huang Ji how he knew the old man and what business he had with him. Huang Ji did not go into details and admitted that he had actually seen the old man for the first time. Soon they arrived by taxi at the place Huang Ji had indicated. Lin Li wondered why they had come to such a place. Huang Ji explained to him that the old man would soon return to this place and that they had to ambush him. Lin Li was impressed. He had been talking to the old man for over a month and did not know where he lived. However, Huang Ji knew where the old man lived. He even thought that the old man and Huang Ji had some serious misunderstandings and issues. Now he was sure that Huang Ji was a true master. The guy wanted to prove himself to Huang Ji because then Huang Ji might teach him some secret techniques, or at least the basics. After sitting behind the bushes for a while, they saw an old man looking around, trying to see if anyone else was following him. At that moment, Lin Li jumped out of the bushes. He went behind the old man and knocked him to the ground. The guy exclaimed again that the old man could not escape them now. Poor old man, the guys were chasing him all over the city, and it was so hard for him. The old man was surprised that the guys were so persistent that they found him again. Huang Ji pompously declared that they were tired of waiting for the old man, so he asked the old man to invite them to visit him. The old man did not understand why they were doing all this, because if these people had made it to China, then if they wanted to, they could kill him. However, in China, these people's lawlessness would not work. The old man even thought that the guy had deliberately fallen for his deception. Huang Ji was tired of the old man's stupid questions, so he said that there had been a misunderstanding. He asked the old man not to worry, because he was not who the old man thought he was. Placing his hand on the old man's shoulder, the guy with a frightening face asked the old man to come inside, as he did not like to discuss certain things in the moonlight. After examining the guy from head to toe once more, the old man noticed that the guy really didn't look like those people. He asked Lin Li to let him go so they could go inside the house to talk. They climbed the stairs to the right floor and approached the old man's front door. However, before the old man could open the front door of his apartment, the guy tugged on his jacket and asked him to wait. He found a suspicious fingerprint on the old man's front door. He then gestured for the others to keep quiet. He took the old man and Lin Li around the corner of the entryway, asking them to wait at that spot. Quietly slipping into the apartment, the guy grabbed the TV remote. Lin Li tried to ask what was going on here, but the guy covered his mouth with his hand, telling Lin Li to be quiet. After that, Huang Ji used the remote to turn on the TV. There was another drama on TV about relationships, betrayal, and stealing. Huang Ji asked the others to hide and keep quiet. The old man was scared at this moment. Suddenly, the door of one of the rooms opened and two men appeared from behind the door, masked masks covering the lower part of their faces. The old man was surprised to find that someone had actually ambushed him in his apartment. If the guy hadn't stopped him, he would be watching TV right now, unsuspecting. The old man stared at the guy, who seemed to have noticed the intruders in the old man's apartment only by the keyhole and the small footprints on the stairs. He remembered from their night chase that the guy was good at surveillance, but now the guy had exceeded his expectations. The killers rushed to attack the old man, who was supposed to be sitting on the couch watching TV. However, they suddenly discovered that there was no one on the couch. Huang Ji appeared behind them, and with one punch to the neck, he knocked out one of the assassins. The other assassin immediately noticed that his accomplice had been knocked out, so he rushed to attack the assailant. Huang Ji was so cool that he crouched down to tie the non-existent laces on his shoes, thus cleverly dodging the attack. And then he himself easily attacked the assassin with his finger on one of his acupuncture points. The assassin squealed in pain and gained distance from the guy. However, in an instant, Huang Ji caught up with him, and the assassin quickly started kissing the floor. Huang Ji began to twist the assassin's arm, causing the assassin to wail in pain. After his abuse of the assassin, the guy stabbed the assassin in the neck, after which the assassin lost consciousness. Lin Li was once again delighted by the guy. The old man was also surprised that such a young guy, and he was already a master. He noticed that an ordinary person wouldn't have been able to withstand even one blow. Now he realized that it was a good thing that he didn't show off. Otherwise, he would have been lying like those two grief-stricken assassins. Lin Li was delighted, immediately rushing over to the guy and trying to find out what techniques the guy used. He was especially interested in the technique where the guy pressed with one finger and the assassin choked to death. Huang Ji didn't hold anything back, informing the guy that it was a pressure release point in the chest. When you hit this point hard, all the air is pushed out of the lungs. Lin Li was impressed, as it was basically a finger pushing out air. Huang Ji pulled the mask off the face of one of the men. The old man was trying to find out from the guy what kind of assassins had come to his house. The guy didn't know much himself, but it was obvious that the assassins had come for the old man. Only now did the old man decide to inquire about who the guy even was and what he knew. Huang Ji decided to tell him that he knew a lot about his affairs, and that the old man's son, Wang Xiaofan, had told him everything. The old man's son invited him to join them, but the guy couldn't, and so he declined. He later found out about the old man's son, death, and had been looking for the old man all this time. It was a simple legend invented by Huang Ji. Huang Ji remarked that he was sorry that Wang Xiaofan had died. The old man was shaking just at the mention of his son's name. The old man clearly shouldn't have gotten involved in murky matters and put his son in danger. Lin Li was surprised that Huang Ji turned out to be acquainted with the old man's son. Huang Ji pointed out that it was a long story and also whispered that it was a made-up story. It was actually the first time the guy had seen the old man, so there was no way he could know the old man's son. He just used his ability and found out all this information just by looking at the old man. But for the old man, he picked the most believable version about the old man's son. Especially he knew that the old man's son couldn't tell him anything, since the old man's son had already died. The old man took the locket out of his pocket. He opened the locket and looked once again at the photo of his son, which was in the locket. Putting the locket back into his jacket pocket, he stated that Xiaofan's death was their fault, as they overestimated their strength. The old man believed that the guy didn't join their ranks, so he didn't understand why the guy regretted anything at all. Huang Ji decided to tell the old man that there are powerful alien civilizations hiding on the moon. The aliens are observing the Earth civilization and even keeping it with a kind of cage. The guy admitted that he did not understand why the alien civilizations had not yet conquered mankind, but he understood perfectly well that the intentions of the aliens were very unkind. He also shared with the old man that the aliens have raised a group of traitors to humanity on Earth, who act as agents of alien forces. They prevent humans from uniting and suppress the development of space technology. The guy also added that the traitors are smuggling for the aliens. The old man was surprised if Xiaofan had told the guy everything. Huang Ji only smiled after noticing the old man's reaction. He explained that the gang of henchmen consisted of the richest people in the world. They have a wide range of organizations under their command, such as banks and think tanks. The old man continued the speech, adding that under their command there are also transnational corporations, research institutes, foundations and other network organizations. They secretly control more than 100 capitalist countries. According to the old man, their symbol is the all-seeing eye on the full moon, and their name is Moonlight Alliance. Huang Ji joined the conversation, noting that Moonlight Alliance has infiltrated many secret services of different countries and is hiding the existence of aliens from humans to make life easier for themselves. However, the guy believed that it was impossible to hide the truth forever. Among the countless enthusiastic ufologists who believe that aliens are around, found an elite group that joined together and created an organization that opposes Moonlight Alliance. This group is also known as the Kunlun Society. The goals of the Kunlun Society are to thwart the Moonlight Alliance's plans, to obtain irrefutable evidence of alien malevolence, to obtain and publicize all alien archives in the Alliance's possession, and to awaken the spirit of unity and resistance in mankind. The truth is out there. The organization has been dissolved and reconstituted several times, survived several betrayals and extermination operations of the Moonlight Alliance. In terms of capability, power, wealth, and even organization, they were inferior to the Moonlight Alliance in every way. Since its founding in 1948, the Kunlun Society had never once been able to create a threat that could shake the Moonlight Alliance's foundations, let alone the hidden alien forces behind the alliance. Currently, the old man believed that they were the third generation, and their strength was far less than the previous two. For the moment, they were almost entirely composed of amateurs. However, Huang Ji noted that despite the huge difference in strength, they still didn't give up. Last year, they had managed to infiltrate an armed research institute in the state of New Mexico in an attempt to steal the technical data stored there. It appears that Xiaofan died during that mission. The old man sat down on the floor and clutched his head, tears streaming from his eyes. He said bitterly that the idea was stupid, a pure gamble. In the end of this mission, they had lost almost half of their men. Of the remaining men, some were exposed, and they had to flee. He was one such fugitive. In order to hide from Moonlight Alliance's pursuit, he returned to his homeland, China. The Moonlight Alliance's influence was weakest in China. But the old man still has to hide because he knows that the people from the Alliance are searching for him. Lin Li had absolutely no understanding of how the talk of aliens suddenly came up. He thought it was just a lingering joke between the old man and Huang Ji. The guy had to explain to him that all the words they had said earlier were not a joke. Huang Ji affirmatively stated that Moonlight Alliance's power was superior to every country in the world, and every few years, they sold humans to aliens in exchange for some alien high technology. The blonde guy had no way of understanding why the aliens needed humans. Then the old man explained to him that humans become slaves to the aliens. Huang Ji was a little surprised when he heard the old man talk about slavery. He immediately thought that this seemed to be what the Kunlun Society thought, although he thought it was too naive. Even though he didn't know the specific goals of the aliens, he could guess from the way the grey aliens from the moon called humans delicious that humans were just food to them. Huang Ji reminded the old man that an incredibly large number of people had died, so he asked the old man if Kunlun Society had any results. He couldn't believe that they hadn't been able to achieve even the slightest success in their endeavor. However, the old man brought the disappointing news that they hadn't managed to get anything and had suffered a total defeat. However, after looking closely at the old man, the guy realized that the old man didn't trust him since they had managed to obtain something. Huang Ji turned to Lin Li, wondering how the university student was able to fall for the old man's empty words. He thought that the old man probably showed the guy some kind of trick, since the guy believed the old man so easily. The blonde tried to remember his first meeting with the old man. He managed to remember that the old man had demonstrated the flight of the golden core. The old man even blabbed to the students that he controlled the golden core with qi. The blonde guy couldn't see any trick in the old man's actions. However, the old man now admitted that he was showing a simple trick at the time. Huang Ji immediately found a scientific explanation for the old man's trick. It seemed to him that the old man's trick was similar to superconducting magnetic levitation, the Meissner effect. Assuming that there was a magnet hidden inside the staff, the superconductor could levitate stably above or below a permanent magnet due to the magnetic flux anchoring effect. But the guy reminded that in such a case, the superconductor requires ultra-low temperatures to exhibit this property, and current technology does not allow this to be achieved. Lin Li was surprised at such a detailed explanation of the old man's trick. The old man, on the other hand, was surprised that the guy seemed to have figured out his bluff. Huang Ji again explained that Xiaofan trusted him and told him everything he knew before he left. Xiaofan also told the guy about the old man as well. According to Xiaofan, the old man was the closest person to him. Xiaofan's biggest dream was to pilot a spaceship built by humans and travel the vastness of space with his father. Huang Ji, still pretending to be Xiaofan's friend, said that he completely did not expect to meet the old man when the old man was cheating people in the restaurant. The old man was still under great shock. Xiaofan spoke of his dream only to him, and since the guy could repeat his son's words, he decided that the guy was unlikely to be from Moonlight Alliance. In the end, the old man believed that the guy was actually a friend of Xiaofan's, whom Xiaofan had met in China. He even convinced himself that his son was returning to the country before last year's mission, and that was probably when Xiaofan met the guy who was standing in front of him now. The old man quickly appraised the lad, believing that despite his youth, the lad was quite capable. From the old man's observation, the guy was not only proficient in martial arts, but he was also very cautious and shrewd. The old man thought that his son wanted to recruit the guy, so he told him all the information. This was the only explanation he found for himself. The old man admitted that Xiaofan had high standards and looked down on ordinary people. So if he recognized the guy as his friend, it meant that the guy had extraordinary abilities. Huang Ji parried the old man's words, hinting and guffawing that Xiaofan had no standards and that he only made vulgar jokes. Huang Ji decided to play a joke on the old man, noting that although he didn't know Xiaofan that much, Xiaofan had told him how the old man had taught Xiaofan to play with mud when he was a kid, so he didn't notice any arrogance in Xiaofan. The old man immediately dropped the subject, lying that Xiaofan was lying and that he had never taught him such a thing. Such details of the father-son relationship weakened the old man's vigilance, convincing him that he was his son's friend. Huang Ji was glad that he had finally managed to convince the old man that he was Xiaofan's friend, even though he was not really his friend and did not even know him. The old man asked the guy to call him Old Wang. He inquired if the blonde guy was a friend of the guy. Huang Ji admitted that they had just met today and that originally Lin Li was a stranger at all. In fact, the old man had actually dragged Lin Li into the matter. Only now was the old man surprised by Lin Li's presence. After all, the guy had said so many things in front of Lin Li, and it turned out that he and Lin Li had only met today. The old man looked at the blonde guy with an arrogant glance, noting that the guy was incredibly dumb as a pig and that he could hardly be related to his son in any way. Lin Li simply became furious after the old man's words, but Huang Ji calmed him down. He told the old man that Lin Li could be trusted. After all, he was a great judge of character and never made a mistake. Lin Li's face even blushed a little when the guy stood up for him in front of the old man and showed how he trusted him, even though they had just met today. The old man, on the contrary, thought that Lin Li was just an ordinary student, and that Lin Li would clearly not keep quiet. Furthermore, considering the ambush at his house, the old man was well aware that his location had already been revealed. So they needed to leave the house immediately. The old man explained that since the guy and Lin Li were just acquaintances, there was no need to drag Lin Li along. The blonde guy declared that there was no way he would blab. However, the old man could hardly take the word of some stranger he barely knew. Lin Li excitedly stated that he was actually fascinated by mystical and fantastic things and events, and that was why he had been waiting for such a supernatural moment in his life all this time. He thought that the information about aliens, Moonlight Alliance, Kunlun Society was incredibly cool. He had long been bored with his everyday life already, so he asked the old man to join them. However, the old man reminded the blonde guy that it wasn't just entertainment, but that people were dying while doing their occupation. Lin Li thundered that he was not afraid of danger. Huang Ji then intervened in their conversation, wondering if the guy was going to die anyway, if he could join them. His words caused Old Wang and Lin Li to be perplexed. Without explaining anything to them, Huang Ji asked the old man that since he was able to perform tricks with the golden core, it shouldn't be difficult for him to earn money. Besides, he thought that even if the old man wanted to make money by cheating someone, he could find someone richer. Therefore, he didn't understand why the old man only cheated small-time hooligans and students. He bluntly said that the old man showed in front of Lin Li Flight of the Golden Core. After this so-called trick, the guy would soon die. Therefore, Huang Ji asked if the old man would continue to insist that it was just a trick. Old Wang couldn't find the words to answer the guy standing in front of him. Would the old man give in under the pressure of a guy who could see right through the old man? At this moment, the old man's face covered with cold sweat, and he recognized that the guy was indeed smart. After that, he admitted that they had managed to steal something from the research institute. He knew that this fact would be revealed sooner or later, but he had no other choice as he urgently needed money. Huang Ji looked towards the blonde man and decided to tell him everything by slightly changing the essence of what was happening. He told the guy that when old man Wang knocked the guy down, he felt the guy's pulse and came to the conclusion that the guy had cancer. For Lin Li, this was too unexpected. Huang Ji then hugged the guy and then pressed a point on his body, asking if he was in pain. Lin Li immediately squealed that he was in pain. Huang Ji explained that the guy had a tumor in that spot. The guy couldn't believe it and fell to the floor as if he had lost all his strength. The old man was even more shocked as he didn't expect Huang Ji to know about medicine. It was hard for him to believe that the guy in front of him could do so many things, although he suddenly thought that if he poked his finger like this, it would hurt anyone. The old man grabbed Lin Li's hand and then pointed out that if Lin Li came back, he would most likely be killed too. So the old man still agreed that the guy could stay with them and help with their case. After struggling to stand on his feet, Lin Li promised that he would try his best. After that, Huang Ji put his hand on his shoulder encouragingly. Huang Ji explained to the guy that his tumor was small, so if the guy started proper and effective treatment, everything could still be fixed. Lin Li was happy to know that his life was safe. However, he still had some questions that he didn't know the answers to. He realized that the Moonlight Alliance they were talking about, although it looked imposing, was not that omnipotent. Therefore, he suggested that he try telling the government about the aliens so that he could use the power of the state to fight them. Huang Ji immediately rejected his idea, and the old man thought that the guy was definitely crazy for suggesting such an idea. Lin Li looked at them perplexedly. The old man patiently explained to him that they had no hard evidence. All their information about aliens came from the Moonlight Alliance, and that no one had ever seen a real alien. Also, although the Moonlight Alliance doesn't have much influence outside of the United States, its economic influence is global. If they recklessly disclose information about the aliens, not only will they not get support, but they will also bring about their imminent demise. Huang Ji recalled that the Kunlun Society had failed 3 times in history. Once they even promoted a congressman to the presidency in an attempt to expose the truth from the top down, but that president was assassinated 3 years after taking office. Sounds like he's talking about John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Kunlun Society then underwent a massive purge. The old man sighed, remembering the old days. He remembered that those 3 years had been the most glorious 3 years for Kunlun Society, but that time had only lasted 3 years. After that, the Moonlight Alliance was frantically pressuring Kunlun Society. So many members of the organization betrayed them to save their lives, and as a result, Kunlun Society's strength was drastically weakened. The old man sadly pointed out that after decades of reorganization, they were unable to fight Moonlight Alliance. They could only hide in the shadows and do minor mischief. After that, he raised his head and looked directly at the guy, repeating his last words while looking him in the eyes. However, Huang Ji only grinned, proclaiming that he had never believed in invincible opponents. He even declared that he refused to join them because he knew that they wouldn't succeed. The old man did not argue with him, but accepted the sad truth. He inquired about what the guy really wanted. Huang Ji pointed out that they had a common goal, but before deciding whether to join Kunlun Society, he would like to see the level of the other Kunlun Society members. At this point, he could only provide funding and a little help to the Kunlun Society. When the old man heard about the financing, he was happy about it. He asked if the guy could give him 50,000, because he had a brother in Langdon who didn't have enough money to buy a boat for illegal immigration. The old man thought that the more money, the better. However, Huang Ji corrected him, asking him not to rush to leave yet, for China was a relatively safe place right now. He informed him that he would give the old man money for the old man to help him buy something. The old man didn't believe in the current safety for him in that place. He pointed out to the guy that his house had already been broken into by assassins. Huang Ji then pointed out that it was unlikely to be people sent by Moonlight Alliance. The old man took another look at the assassins who had infiltrated his house and agreed with the guy's opinion. The old man walked over to one of the assassins, grabbed him by the collar, and started shaking him, trying to wake up the assassin. When the assassin regained consciousness, they sat down next to him and with a good-natured look, asked him to tell them who had sent him. The assassin gave up pretty quickly and squealed that he would tell all. They were soon able to find out that the one who sent the assassins was not the Moonlight Alliance. Huang Ji revealed that someone had paid the local gang leader Zhang Junwei 1 million to find the old man. However, Zhang Junwei thought that if he caught the old man himself, he would get even more money, so Zhang Junwei decided to act early. The old man even cheered up because he had to thank Zhang Junwei for being so greedy as to not let Moonlight Alliance know the old man's whereabouts first. Huang Ji approached the assassins, causing one of the assassins to squeal, not realizing what the guy was going to do. Suddenly, the assassins heard that he had given them acupuncture castration. Hearing this, the assassins were shocked. He explained to them that such a thing could not be treated in the hospital, so only he could save them. The assassins immediately fell face down on the floor, begging the guy to spare them. They were willing to do anything he asked them to do, even calling him the new boss of the neighborhood. However, the guy assured them that they were mistaken and that he wasn't the new boss of this neighborhood. Huang Ji pointed them to the guy standing next to him, telling them that they should call him that. Lin Li didn't understand why they chose him for this case. After that, they arrived at the warehouse that was the assassin's base. As soon as the assassin approached the people standing near the warehouse, they asked him why he had been gone so long and where the others were. The assassin tried to explain that the old man had come back late and that everyone was already in the car. One of the men asked why the assassin had a woman's voice. The assassin instinctively covered his reproductive organ with his hands, assuring the man that he had only imagined it. They then got out of the car. The man was surprised that the assassin brought 3 people and was puzzled why the hands of the people were tied and the assassin did not tie them up in any way. The assassin then explained to him that the other 2 were friends of the old man and that they were all incredibly scared and docile, so tying them up was unnecessary. After that, the man kicked the 3 men inside the warehouse. There were many people in the warehouse. Some were watching a soccer match on TV, others were playing dominoes, and the rest were doing other things. The others remarked again that the boss had won again, and the boss arrogantly thanked them for giving in. Just at that moment, he noticed the guests arriving at his place. He was perplexed as to why the dark-haired guy was laughing at him. Taking a seat at the table, the boss decided to play one more game. At that moment, one of the assassins approached him. The boss inquired what the assassin wanted to tell him, but the assassin didn't dare to continue the conversation. At that moment, an old man entered the conversation. He inquired if the man was the boss here. Zhang Junwei confirmed that he was the boss and that there was a reward of 1 million for the old man. However, the old man pointed out to the boss that 1 million was somehow small and that he was actually worth at least 10 million. At that moment, the boss asked the old man not to talk his teeth. He wondered why the old man was being hunted. The old man admitted that he had stolen something, so there was a hunt for his head. The boss became curious about what the old man had stolen. He thought that if they were willing to pay 1 million just for a tip on the old man, then most likely the stolen item must be worth more than 1 million. The man even began to dream about how he would take the stolen item for himself. However, the old man asked if the boss was sure that he could talk here, because it would be better for their conversation to be face-to-face. The boss was against such an initiative of the old man, telling the old man to tell everything here. Besides, he told the old man to stop showing tricks and finally tell everything. The guy realized that the boss was too cunning and he wouldn't be able to get a chance to knock him out alone. Therefore, he decided to proceed with a different plan. Huang Ji stepped forward, announcing to the boss that some things were better not to ask, because when you find out, you might be finished. The old man thought that the guy had thought things out intelligently. When they were still at the old man's house, while Lin Li was talking to the assassins, the old man and the guy were talking amongst themselves. The old man was slightly surprised that the guy's plan was for them to pretend to be caught and then infiltrate the boss's lair to knock out the boss. Huang Ji thought this was the best option to prevent the boss from passing on the information about the old man further. The old man stated that once he found the moment, he would take out the boss with a couple of blows. Lin Li couldn't understand what the old man was saying. The old man grabbed him with both hands and then easily lifted him above him. He reminded them that when he was a policeman, he had caught not a few bandits. Even the assassins were shocked to see the old man like this. Huang Ji thought that someone who dared to not disclose information and act on their own must be greedy. Therefore, if they gave the boss the bait, the plan should work. However, the greedier a person is, the more cautious they are as well. Therefore, Huang Ji felt that if the boss didn't take their bait, then he would intervene. Presently, the boss was furious, for some fellow had taken it upon himself to frighten him. The old man thought that now all hope was on the guy. The boss grabbed a nearby bottle and rushed towards the guy. He shouted that the guy was definitely finished and that the guy wouldn't be able to handle him. Huang Ji deftly dodged the bottle kick from the boss's side. The boss got into a fighting stance as the guy went on the attack. He even laughed slightly at the guy as he blocked his hand with his giant palm, thinking that the guy was only trying to sneak attack him. The boss thought that the guy didn't stand a chance, but at that moment the guy struck him with his other hand. He was originally going to attack the boss's weak points, the lower back and the nerve knot. The boss couldn't understand how the guy suddenly changed his fighting technique. Meanwhile, Huang Ji was like a seer, working according to a pre-predicted scheme. He effectively dodged, trying to immediately counterattack, and then used an effective kick, a right-side, circular leg kick. The boss immediately flew off to the side, falling next to the table where he had recently been having fun. After that, the boss ordered all of his minions to kill the guests. Lin Li and the old man stood next to Huang Ji when a bunch of people ran at them. Huang Ji grabbed the boss and told the others that he had found something useful. He then took out a knife and a weapon from the boss's pants. The old man decided to take the weapons since he was good with them. However, Huang Ji just took the weapon and tossed it aside, causing the old man to get incredibly angry. Then grabbing a knife, Huang Ji took the boss hostage. He politely asked everyone to drop their weapons, as otherwise he would kill their boss. The boss still hadn't given up, thinking the guy was clearly not a badass, even if he now had a knife. The boss was even anticipating in his thoughts that he could easily get out of such a situation. However, as soon as he jerked his head, he felt the blade stabbed into him, causing him to wail for the guy to pull the blade out of him. Poor boss, Huang Ji was going to assert himself at his expense. How will the guy and the others get out of this situation? The bandits told the guy to let their boss go immediately. However, Huang Ji was not going to give up and told the boss to tell his subordinates to keep quiet. The boss was immediately startled and told his subordinates to shut up immediately. Huang Ji pointed out that even though the cut looked scary, it didn't actually hit the boss's vital points, only the skin, so it was only a superficial wound. He assumed that the boss now thought that he was some kind of ruthless demon who kills without blinking an eye, so the boss wouldn't dare to take any action against Huang Ji now. After that, the guy told the boss to hand him the phone. In a shaky voice, the boss was fine with the guy taking his phone, but asked the guy not to shake his hands violently. Once Huang Ji took the boss's phone, he easily unlocked it, which greatly surprised the boss because he didn't understand how the guy knew his password. Huang Ji, meanwhile, paid no attention to him, checking the call history of the last week on phone. At this moment, he was leafing through the boss's contacts on phone. Sister Zhang, Lin Xiaomei, 666, Sun Erwa, Night Beer. While someone else would have overlooked this contact, such trivialities could not escape the guy's attention, and he realized that the contact signed as 666 was the one who was an employee of Moonlight Alliance. At that moment, one of the subordinates grabbed a weapon and told no one to move. The boss only now remembered that the guy had originally thrown the weapon away. So now the situation was about to change in favor of the boss. The boss immediately told the guy to immediately let him go. Huang Ji, on the other hand, did not react in any way to the boss or the boss's subordinate. The boss told the subordinates to immediately shoot the guests if the guy dared to harm him. He didn't believe Guy wouldn't be scared after such actions from the boss. The subordinate agreed with him, However, the assassin standing next to him didn't understand why the subordinate agreed with the boss's words and didn't think of a way to get the boss out of such a mess. The subordinate only admitted that he knew it all, but it was an order from the boss. The boss, seeing the strange actions of his subordinate, was incredibly scared, realizing that the subordinate just wants to eliminate him. So he told the subordinate to stop. At that moment, the subordinate shot his boss. However, he didn't understand why nothing happened, and the boss was still alive. The boss was furious that his henchman dared to shoot him. The henchman immediately tried to get out of the situation, claiming that he just missed. Lin Li bent down and picked up the bullet and was immediately surprised, for they were plastic bullets, which meant a toy gun had been used. The old man asked if the guy knew that the gun was a toy gun from the beginning. The guy immediately admitted that's why he threw the toy gun away. The other men were enraged. They immediately surrounded the henchman, noting that the henchman had huge ambitions and that he had never obeyed Zhang Junwei and thus wanted to take the boss's place. The henchman tried to justify that he did it by accident. Huang Ji, on the other hand, in his thoughts, was celebrating his genius, because he had purposely thrown the toy gun towards the henchman, since out of the entire crowd, only this henchman would actually shoot at the boss. Huang Ji mocked the boss, pointing out that the boss was not very good at disciplining his subordinates, and that one of the subordinates was already vying for the boss's position, but the boss didn't react to it. Zhang Junwei thought that his weapon was an ultra-realistic replica, so he thought that an ordinary person would never distinguish it from the real thing. The boss was greatly surprised that some guy immediately realized that the gun was a toy gun as soon as he barely picked up the weapon. Zhang Junwei even thought that the guy must be very good with weapons. Now he also realized that now the last attempt to get out of this situation was now gone. He can't twitch in a situation like this and must just sit obediently as his life is at risk. Eventually, the boss announced to everyone present that he was surrendering. He also told his henchmen to drop their weapons and step back. The subordinates were actually worried about their Tony Soprano. Zhang Junwei finally decided to inquire about who the guy standing in front of him was. However, Huang Ji was not particularly interested in the boss's opinion. He pointed at the phone screen and asked the boss directly if the contact recorded as 666 had hired him to catch the old man. The boss did not hide the information, saying that the customer had given 50,000 as a deposit and promised to give another million after the assignment was completed. The boss even admitted that he was greedy when he decided to grab them himself. Zhang Junwei couldn't understand how the guy even knew about this phone number. Huang Ji added that if the boss called that number and said he caught them, the boss's life would definitely be over. The guy explained that it wasn't him at all who would take the boss's life, but the customer of such a strange assignment. The boss's face was covered with cold sweat from such terrible information. But at the same moment, he looked threateningly at the guy, wondering why he thought that it would happen like that. Huang Ji decided to explain to the hapless boss that originally the boss should have just been honest about Old Man Wang's location. After that, the customer would grab the old man himself, and everything would be fine. The boss would get the money, and the customer would get Old Man Wang. However, the boss decided to disobey the customer's order and started acting arbitrarily. So the boss could theoretically find out confidential information that the customer didn't want to spread about. Therefore, the customer could simply eliminate the boss as a precaution. The boss didn't fully understand what it was about, because he didn't really know anything, but only heard that the old man had stolen something. But Huang Ji pointed out that it didn't matter what the old man had stolen. What mattered was that the customer would think that the boss knew about it. Since there was a suspicion, it was better to eliminate the boss by mistake than to miss out on secret information. Huang Zhe even noted that the boss was some kind of lowlife, so he wondered through which of the boss's acquaintances the client had made contact with the boss. Zhang Junwei admitted that it was Ma Ye. The guy wondered if the boss could reach out to Ma Ye. After all, in the eyes of 666, the boss was just a pawn. Zhang Junwei still didn't fully understand what the guy was telling him. He didn't understand why such a big and tough customer would turn to him then. However, Huang Ji assured the boss that no one had ever said that the customer had only approached him. The guy said that in 3 weeks, the customer had contacted thousands of groups like Zhang Junwei's, more than 5,000 in dozens of provinces and special districts across the country. The customer simply used them as temporary snitches, spreading a wide network across the country. The deposits alone cost over 100 million. The boss thought that it all sounded like complete nonsense. However, at this moment, he remembered that Ma Ye had specifically contacted him back then and told him to give his best. Zhang Junwei then thought that it was just an order from his friend and that Ma Ye didn't want to slap his face in the dirt. But now he clearly understood that he had not paid attention to Ma Ye's rather strange behavior that time. Only now did he realize that Ma Ye had acted as if he was afraid of something. Ma Ye had contacted him and insisted that Zhang Junwei should do everything as quickly as possible and not do the job half-heartedly, but give his best. The guy thought to believe him or not, it was up to the boss. But he still asked the boss to listen so that the boss would forget about this number and not call under any circumstances. And if anyone asks about them, he should say he never saw them. Guy, you're the one calling this phone number right now, judging from the phone screen. Huang Ji stated that he will delete the call history and phone number from the boss's phone. If the boss agrees with his decision, he will let the boss go. There was no choice, so the boss agreed to his terms. As soon as the guy released the boss immediately knocked the guy's hand aside. Stretching out his hand, he stated that he had indeed made a promise to the guy. However, he also noted that his gang did not agree with him on this decision. His henchmen gathered to finish off the two guys and the old man in a flash. Grabbing a chair to fight off the bandits, the old man felt that there was no way to negotiate with this kind of gang, so they just had to deal with them. Lin Li also wanted to help, but the old man advised him not to be a hero. Huang Ji did not continue the dialogue further, but rushed forward. The bandits were amazed that the guy himself rushed towards them. The boss thought that the guy was getting himself into trouble, so he told his henchmen to punish the guy for such insolence. However, none of the bandits did not suspect that the guy does not play fair and anticipates every move of his opponents. He deftly dodged all the attacks of the bandits, light blows counterattacked, and knocked them out. The bandits were shocked at how the guy dodged so skillfully. One of the bandits told the others not to stand and catch the guy, but the other bandit said with a smile that they should calm down because he had locked the door and the guy would not be able to escape. At this moment they noticed that the guy wasn't running towards the door at all. Huang Ji ran over to the electricity panel and pulled the switch down. In the same instant, the room went dark. The bandits started complaining that they couldn't see anything. They realized that this was all the guy wanted, and one of them told them to turn on the lights. The men started crashing into each other in the dark. Eventually, a scuffle started between the men in the dark. After a while, finally someone turned the lights back on. Lin Li and the old man were surprised at this, as they hadn't escaped yet. They tried to look around the room and saw the boss's subordinates lying on the floor, not understanding what had even happened here. Lin Li was surprised, asking the guy if the guy could see perfectly in the dark. Huang Ji said that he did, because he had been practicing his night vision. He thought that this information was not a lie. After all, for him darkness is really no different from daytime, and he can see everyone perfectly. The boss was lying on the floor at this time. The guy inquired as to where the boss was going. Huang Ji inquired if the man still wanted to fight with him. Sitting down on the floor, the boss stated that he was ready to finally admit that the guy was cool. He informed that he didn't need the money anymore, so he decided that they could just pretend that they never met the old man. However, the guy admitted that he didn't come here to just beat up the boss and leave quietly. The boss already didn't understand at all what the guy wanted from him in the first place. It finally came to Zhang Junwei's attention that the guy had finally decided that he wanted to become his boss. The man was outraged after all. If a guy could fight, it didn't mean he would become the boss. However, Huang Ji had some trump cards up his sleeve. He approached the boss and whispered that if the boss didn't obey him, then everyone else in the boss's team would find out that their boss liked to dress up in women's clothes. Zhang Junwei blushed at such shocking information, but in the same instant he reacted, trying to pretend that he didn't know what the guy was talking about at all. The boss likes to pamper himself, but because of his secret, he's now on the hook for a guy who will blackmail him with it every time. Despite Zhang Junwei's best attempts to justify himself, the guy clearly indicated that he knew about his weakness. He also reminded the man that he probably should have still had the photos. Zhang Junwei continued to undertake, his face getting redder and redder with shame. He told the guy to cut the crap and get out of here. The man even promised that he wouldn't say a word to anyone about seeing them. He also decided for the guy to collect the advance payment paid from the customer as an apology for the misunderstanding. Huang Ji already felt the man was in his power. As if he himself didn't know before, he happily remarked that it seemed the man had these photos after all. As if he knew nothing at all, he began to speculate aloud where the man might have kept such secret photos. A smile suddenly appeared on his face as he stated that such important things the man probably carried right with him, so he couldn't wait to look at the man's photos right now. He abruptly touched Zhang Junwei, informing him that the photos were here. The boss was incredibly angry, stating that he would beat the guy up right now. However, grabbing the boss by the belt and dodging, the guy pulled the belt off the boss as he stumbled back and started to fall. At the sight of the belt, the guy pretended as if he had learned about it by accident and was so demonstratively pleased that he had found what he was looking for. After that, he pulled a flash drive out of the belt plaque, and then inserted the flash drive into his phone, which scared the boss incredibly. While the guy was smirking at the pictures on the phone, Zhang Junwei pitifully begged the guy to give him the phone back. The boss's subordinate was in complete shock that his boss was kneeling in front of some guy like some kind of dog. Old man Wang was extremely curious to know what kind of secret the boss had stored on the flash drive that the boss was so humiliated in front of the guy. Lin Li even naively suggested that maybe there was some evidence on there that the boss had killed someone. The guy abruptly told the boss to stop. He inquired about what the boss thought of him. The guy stated that he was saving the boss's life. Zhang Junwei, with his face covered in cold sweat, completely didn't understand what the guy was telling him now. Huang Ji then showed him his phone screen, informing him that he had seen his correspondence with his mother. He also pointed out that he knows how Zhang Junwei cares for his mother and that he likes people like that, so he would never threaten Zhang Junwei's family. However, the guy reminded that other people would threaten her. Grabbing the boss by the collar of his tank top, the guy told him to think about his mother. He also asked the boss to think about his gang and think about himself, because they were all in great danger right now. Huang Ji announced that he was repeating for the last time that if Zhang Junwei believed him and listened to him, he would be able to survive. It was as if the guy had completely forgotten what Zhang Junwei was doing with his gang: robbery, extortion, racketeering, murder, and so on. After that, he let go of Zhang Junwei and he fell to the floor. With a frown, he declared that he understood everything. His face became even more covered in cold sweat as he stated that he would listen to the guy. Old man Wang had no way of understanding why someone as proud and stubborn as Zhang Junwei had given up so quickly, even though he had continued to fight them for so long before. Lin Li was also greatly surprised that he preferred to think that Huang Ji was just a master, so he had done something that they were unable to do. Zhang Junwei seriously began to ponder over the guy's actions. He felt that the guy was not only incredibly agile, but also shrewd and acted ruthlessly. In addition, the guy seemed to be proficient with weapons, so the boss felt that the guy was definitely not an ordinary person. In addition, he felt that the guy was emanating an incredibly powerful aura that even he, an experienced fighter, was forced to moderate his was. Previously, he had only sensed this kind of aura emanating from a person from Ma and the likes of him. But the boss could clearly tell that the guy's aura was noticeably stronger than theirs, as if the guy was some kind of big shot. Finally getting up from the floor, Zhang Junwei declared to his subordinates that from now on, the guy would be his boss, and also their boss too. And whoever disagreed with this statement, let them try to defeat the new boss, and then Zhang Junwei would call the winner the boss. His subordinates were completely shocked, because they didn't even know the name of the guy who suddenly became their boss. Smiling, the guy announced that his name was Hua Shu, and then asked everyone to work for him, and that they would not regret making such a choice. The guy stated that he would be very busy for a while, so while he was away, he would be introduced by the blonde guy who was with him today. As a result, the blonde guy also decided to introduce himself, informing the others that his name was Lin Li. A few hours ago, Huang Ji decided to ask Lin Li for a very important thing. Lin Li was intrigued, wondering what the guy would entrust him with. Huang Ji stated with an important look that much of what they would have to face would be beyond Lin Li's current understanding. Therefore, in order for the plan to run smoothly, Huang Ji required Lin Li to obey his every instruction absolutely without the slightest hesitation. Huang Ji inquired if Lin Li was willing to do such a thing. Lin Li only smirked, saying that he would definitely be able to do so. In the present tense, Zhang Junwei approached Lin Li, addressing him respectfully. Junwei thought that the guy looked completely ordinary, but since Hua Shu trusted him completely, Junwei thought that the guy was definitely not a simpleton. Lin Li, in his thoughts, tried to hold himself and look formidable in front of the real boss of the criminal organization, and try not to show weakness in any way. Leaving Huang Ji reminded them of the order that Junwei had previously received, pointing out that whoever asked them about this order, they should definitely say that they had not found anyone. After that, he threw the thumb drive directly into Junwei's hand. The man accepted the new boss's order. He also instructed the others to also keep their mouths shut and dare not tell anyone what had happened. The subordinates understood his order. Huang Ji remembered that Zhang Junwei was supposed to receive 500,000, so he declared that he would pay him out of his own pocket. However, Junwei politely refused, recalling that if it wasn't for the guy, the customer would have gotten rid of him long ago. Life was much more important to him than money. But Huang Ji assured that he didn't need this fake politeness. Besides, he pointed out that he would soon assign Junwei some work. He also pointed out one of Junwei's men who had previously shot his boss. Huang Ji reminded him that this guy would definitely betray everyone, because after what he had seen earlier, he didn't trust him at all. Becoming serious, Junwei assured the guy to be calm, for he wasn't so reckless to forget what had happened. As soon as he approached the guy tried to convince the boss that his hand had just slipped. Looking down at the guy, he sadly informed him that he wasn't going to kill him since they were close after all. The guy was glad to be alive at all. However, turning away from him, Junwei picked up his phone and called his acquaintance. He informed the acquaintance that he had a friend who had lost his mind, so it was necessary to free up one bed for his friend. The man noted that his friend had violent tendencies. Junwei assured old Chen that he would take care of all the expenses for the guy's treatment and that he would send the required amount every month. He also pointed out that he could come and pick the guy up as early as tomorrow. The guy was in complete shock, realizing what a hard fate awaited him. Junwei glared angrily at the traitor and announced that there was a price to pay for betrayal, so the guy would spend the rest of his life in a psychiatric hospital. And then he told his subordinates to get the traitor out of his sight, so that he wouldn't spoil their mood. Realizing his fate, the guy begged his boss to forgive him and let him go. He begged for help. However, no one listened to him anymore. The assassin decided to ask Junwei what Hua Shu had threatened him with. Junwei stated that he had killed a man and that there was proof of it on the flash drive. The assassin was surprised that it was true, blurted out his secret, because if someone decided to betray him or started working for the police, they would definitely try to get that evidence as evidence. And what will be their surprise when they find there are pictures of him in very interesting clothes? Zhang Junwei said that all this information was no longer important. He now believed that he had a future with the guy because he could now clearly see that the client Ma Yi had brought to him was incredibly murky. Zhang Junwei realized that he had acted arbitrarily, and if something went wrong, it could hurt everyone in his gang, so he decided to choose a side right away. Besides, the man felt that the others should have also noticed by now that Hua Shu was not an ordinary guy. In the end, the assassin decided that the boss was right and that his words made sense. Especially the assassin himself understood it perfectly well, knowing that his life was in the guy's hands. Old Man Wang, being a retired police officer, didn't fully believe the assassination story. After approaching the guy, he decided to directly ask him what was on the flash drive. The old man thought that a type like Zhang Junwei would be unlikely to leave such obvious clues. However, Huang Ji only smiled, informing him that it was a huge secret and that he had promised to keep Junwei's secret, so he asked the old man not to ask about this secret. The old man was upset as curiosity was eating him up from the inside, but Huang Ji stated that it was already too late, so they needed to go home. He also indicated that Lin Li should go with him. Huang Ji still hasn't shown up at home. Given that Zheng Xuan and Su Lingli know about his condition, they are very worried and are probably already running around looking for him, or have already gone to the police. Soon, Huang Ji and Lin Li arrived at the Platinum House. Lin Li asked the guy to contact him any time if there was anything that needed to be done. At the same instant, the guy took out a suitcase with money. Lin Li was shocked, not at all expecting to get his hands on so much money. Huang Ji said that the suitcase contained 2,400,000. Tomorrow, Lin Li would have to take 500,000 from the suitcase and give this money to Zhang Junwei. He felt that this was a necessary payment because of what happened today, and they still had to punish the traitor. In addition, knowing Zhang Junwei's character, the guy believed that he would definitely divide the money among the remaining 10 subordinates. Therefore, after that, Lin Li would have to get another 100,000 and give it to Zhang Junwei personally. Lin Li couldn't understand why he would do something like this. Also, Lin Li earlier, "I agree to do all your orders." Huang Ji asked him not to ask why he was doing this and just do as he told him. In addition, he asked Lin Li to remember that Lin Li should give money to Zhang Junwei personally from himself. If he doesn't like it that way, then he should pretend to hesitate as if he was allocating money for Zhang Junwei from his own pocket. Guy thought that Zhang Junwei would probably ask Lin Li why he was doing this, but Lin Li shouldn't tell him much. He should just make Zhang Junwei take this money. Lin Li finally didn't mind and said that he understood the order. Huang Ji assumed that Junwei would most likely ask about him, but the guy immediately stated that he would not tell Junwei anything. However, Huang Ji assured him that he should tell some information. Lin Li was perplexed as to what this was even about. Then Huang Ji told Lin Li to tell Junwei that he and old Wang are international thieves, and also that they were being hunted because they had crossed the path of American arms dealers. Huang Ji told his made-up story that Lin Li would have to tell Junwei if he asked him about it. Lin Li was eager to know what his backstory would be, but Huang Ji pointed out that the guy had cancer, which left Lin Li puzzled. Huang Ji asked him to tell Junwei that his days were numbered and that he didn't have long to live. And after that, Lin Li would have to give Junwei the list and ask him to procure everything on the list. After looking at the list, Lin Li realized that many of the items on the list were impossible to obtain. Huang Ji believed that Junwei would tell Lin Li the same thing after reading the list. However, Lin Li shouldn't answer him anything, but should just tell the man to use all his connections and get everything on the list at any cost. After that, Lin Li will have to leave the money to Junwei, saying that this is the initial capital and that there will be more replenishment. The guy will then have to leave them. Lin Li tried to make a calm face, imagining how he would behave at this moment. However, Huang Ji assured him that his facial expression should be cold and indifferent. Lin Li tried to change his facial expression, but the guy was once again dissatisfied, believing that Lin Li's face should not be fierce. Lin Li once again tried to portray a different grimace, but the guy wasn't satisfied even now, thinking that Lin Li's face was too tense right now. He attempted to solve with his own method, which was faster. Looking at the guy, Huang Ji reminded him that the guy as a kid might have seen his mum cleaning crabs with an iron brush, then tying them up and putting them in a steamer to boil them alive. Lin Li was shocked because his mom is actually an excellent crab cook. Huang Ji advised that Lin Li should remember this moment and how he felt at the time. He hinted that the guy may have had moments where he felt special. Lin Li pondered over his words. Lin Li remembered that he had once failed an exam and was terrified of how to explain his failure to his mother, but he couldn't make up his mind and just stood there looking at the crabs. Huang Ji assured him that it was the most indifferent moment of his life, and he just didn't realize it. Huang Ji advised him to remember that moment, to return to that state of mind, but not to try too hard. The next day, Lin Li handed Junwei a bag, informing him that it contained the 500,000 that the boss had previously promised. Junwei did not refuse the money. However, looking at Lin Li inwardly, he was astonished. He felt that the guy today was somehow different and didn't seem at all like he was yesterday. In the end, he decided that this was the guy's true face. Where would such acquaintanceship between Lin Li and his boss Huang Ji lead to? However, all of this was really just in his imagination. The next morning, after his first meeting with Junwei, Lin Li arrived at the used car market at the appointed time. He handed Junwei the backpack, informing him that his older brother had agreed to give Junwei 500,000. Junwei did not come alone, but with an assassin. A tense smile appeared on Junwei's face as he said that he would not be polite and would not refuse the money. He then turned to Xiaojia, who was standing nearby, and told him to take the backpack and divide the money among all the men. Since there were 10 of them, he decided that each would take 50,000. He himself decided to refuse any share of the 500,000. Xiaojia couldn't believe what he had just heard. Then Junwei forcefully shoved the backpack with the money into his hands, then gave him a kick in the butt, telling him to stop talking nonsense, take the money, and go do what he had told him earlier. After sending Xiaojia away, he turned to Lin Li with a forced smile and asked if Lin Li had any other instructions for him. The blonde man took out a plastic card and handed it to Junwei, telling him to take his money. Junwei was stunned, completely unable to understand what was going on. After a moment, a strained smile appeared on his face, and he took the card from Lin Li's hands. He even noted that no one would refuse money. In his mind, he noted that Lin Li did not interfere at all when he divided the entire 500,000 among his 10 subordinates, and even gave him personally 100,000 as compensation separate from the amount in the backpack. He was incredibly pleased to receive such a bonus. Approaching Lin Li, he tried to find out what their new boss and the old man were really doing. Lin Li acted according to the instructions Huang Ji had given him earlier. He reported that Old Man Wang and Big Brother were international thieves. He also said that they had all kinds of skills and often pulled off big deals. Junwei became curious about what 666 had to do with it. The guy explained that 666 was an American arms dealer. Old Man Wang had robbed him, and now he was being hunted all over the world. After all these stories, Junwei's face was covered in cold sweat, but he still tried to find out more information about Lin Li himself. The blonde man acted according to plan and told Junwei that he was actually slowly dying, as he had stomach cancer and didn't have much time left. Junwei's face broke out in a cold sweat even more when he noticed that Brother Li was doing great things. To himself, he noted that Lin Li was a real desperado. Lin Li tried to maintain the composure and manners he had so desperately learned yesterday. He said that the man talked too much. Then he took a piece of paper out of his pocket. The guy handed Junwei the piece of paper, saying that it was a shopping list that his older brother had agreed on with Junwei yesterday. He also pointed out that Junwei should use all his connections to get the items on the list, no matter what. However, as soon as Junwei looked at the goods he needed to buy, he froze, because all of these goods were prohibited. In an instant, he fell to his knees, saying that he was kneeling before Lin Li. Junwei began to complain, noting that no matter what connections he had, he simply would not be able to get some of the items on the list. The man begged the blonde man to ask his boss to remove some items from the list that he would not be able to obtain, no matter how hard he tried. However, his rehearsals in front of the mirror were not in vain. He put on the expression he had practiced yesterday, trying to appear indifferent, as Hua Shu had told him, and remembering that moment with the crabs. Junwei's face was covered in cold sweat as he found the guy's gaze incredibly frightening. Turning around and leaving the meeting, Lin Li said that this was the first batch of funds for the purchase and that he would send more money in the evening. Kneeling, Junwei begged Lin Li to help him convey to his boss that he would not be able to buy some of the items on the list. Watching the blonde man walk away, Junwei was frightened as he realized that he now had no choice and had to do what his boss had ordered him to do. At night, the car pulled up at the location previously agreed upon by the parties. Old Wang and Huang Ji got out of the car. Junwei and Lin Li immediately rushed over to them. With an angry look, Huang Ji told Lin Li not to think he could die so easily, because he was not going to let him die so easily. He continued to yell at the blonde man, saying that he himself knew very well that some medicines were impossible to obtain. So he didn't understand why the blonde man needed to steal anything. Junwei was surprised that it was necessary to steal some medicines. He even thought that Lin Li was such a good guy that he was ready to cry. After that, he turned to Junwei and asked how much he had managed to get from the list. Junwei admitted that he had managed to get the ones marked with a check mark on the list, but some of them would be delivered in a few days. He also said that he still couldn't get some of the items on the list. Huang Ji announced that what he had already collected was enough and that the rest was not needed. Junwei was tense at first, but then felt relieved that the job had been done, and he had no problems. After that, Junwei thanked Lin Li and was about to leave, but Lin Li asked him not to talk nonsense. Turning to Old Man Wang, Huang Ji asked him if he was still worried about how Lin Li was handling things. The old man was surprised that the guy was so skilled that he could even make a rotten piece of wood stand firmly. It was safe here now, but the old man was curious when the guy planned to go with him to England. After all, it was difficult for the brothers of the Kunlun Society to come to China, so he thought they would have to meet in another country. Huang Ji asked Old Man Wang not to worry about anything because his current business would take a maximum of 4 months. If all went well, he would be able to finish the job in just a month. Huang Ji's main goal is undoubtedly to improve his medical skills and prolong his grandfather's life. In the future, he decided to devote himself entirely to medicine, physiology, and chemistry, striving to find a way to save his grandfather as soon as possible. That is why he came to the traditional Chinese medicine hospital today. He recently acquired some surgical knowledge from Lu Qinggong, the best surgeon in all of Shanghai. His foundation in Western medicine was now quite solid, so it was time for him to take a look at the traditional Chinese medicine hospital. Meanwhile, in the hospital director's conference room, a man informed the hospital director that Deputy Director Lu from a leading Shanghai hospital wanted to recommend an intern to the director. The director admitted that he had already heard about this. He had also reviewed the future intern's thesis, finding it to be extremely sloppy, and concluded that Lu was most likely trying to do someone a favor by slipping this intern to them. Director Hong said that when the intern arrived at their hospital, someone from the staff should deal with him. He simply wanted the intern to be assigned anywhere and then report to Deputy Director Lu that they had fulfilled his request. However, at that moment, the doctor reported that the intern was already near the conference room, waiting to be called. Director Hong was extremely surprised at the new intern's quick arrival at their hospital. His expression changed dramatically when he ordered the intern to be let into his conference room. He wanted to see if the new intern would have the courage to meet him. As soon as Huang Ji entered the office, he immediately greeted Director Hong politely. He was about to introduce himself by name, but Director Hong said he didn't want to hear that nonsense. First of all, he wanted the guy to talk about his dissertation and why he wrote it that way. Director Hong even said that if the guy gave a bad explanation, he might not come to the hospital tomorrow. Huang Ji began to stumble over his words a little as he tried to remember his dissertation. In his thoughts, Director Hong also noticed that the guy even stuttered when speaking normally, so he was afraid to imagine how terrible the guy's level of knowledge was. Although he respected Old Man Lu, he didn't want the guy to harm the hospital's patients and reputation. After scanning the information in Director Hong's mind, the guy began his confident speech. He stated that he believed that although the internal organs of the human body are interconnected and inseparable, the importance of the digestive system is indeed key. The guy explained that he believed that the so-called pathogenic factors in traditional Chinese medicine were actually intestinal bacteria, and that if something went wrong, it would affect the entire system. The doctor standing next to him was extremely dissatisfied with the guy's words. The doctor believed that equating pathogenic factors with an imbalance of intestinal bacteria was simply absurd. However, the guy noted that he understood how upset the man was, so he advised him to calm down first. He drew the doctor's attention to the fact that in traditional Chinese medicine there is a saying, "If the stomach energy qi is not lost, the god of death will not take you." This means that as long as the digestive system is able to absorb energy, even with a terminal illness, the body can gradually self-regulate and recover. The number and types of intestinal bacteria determine the functioning of the system. He did not understand why everything he said suddenly sounded like nonsense. Director Hong's face softened at that moment, and he even got up from his seat and approached the guy. There was a smile on his face when he realized that the guy had a very interesting idea and that it could be a good direction for research. He also admitted that he had underestimated the guy before, but now he thought there was no need to delay, so he told the guy to go to Shanghai Medical University to see Lin Tao, who was in the microbiology laboratory. The doctor standing next to them was stunned by Director Hong's words, not understanding why Director Hong believed the guy so easily. Over the next 3 days, Huang Ji used his omniscience to visit Shanghai's leading medical institutions, absorbing a vast amount of medical knowledge and experience. But even so, he admitted that it was difficult for him to gain access to some places. Fortunately, after 2 days of reconnaissance, he finally waited for the right opportunity. At that moment, a security guard approached him. Huang Ji greeted him, saying that he had come for an internship and that Director Lu had told him to register. The security guard asked if he was referring to Director Liu of research. Before the guy could answer, he remembered hearing such information himself. So he asked if the guy was a doctoral student from Columbia University. He also wanted to know the guy's name. The guy said his name was Li Wengxi. Realizing that the guy was the one he had been told about earlier, the security guard asked the guy to go straight to Director Zhao's office, which was in Building C, on the 3rd floor, room 305. The guy thanked the security guard for the information. However, he thought to himself that everything had happened exactly as he had expected, and the information he had received was correct. Director Liu had arranged everything so that no ID check was required, and no one found out that he was not who he claimed to be. When he went to the room indicated by the security guard watched him walk away, following him with his gaze. How soon would they realize that some imposter was infiltrating secure facilities, pretending to be someone else each time? He thought that Director Zhao didn't look like a security guard, but should actually know Li Wengxi. Therefore, he needed to go to Building B and find Research Director Peng. Research Director Peng was a leading genetics expert and should be of great help in the plan to save his grandfather. However, as he approached the door, the guy realized that he needed an electronic ID to pass on. Now he didn't know what he should do next. At that moment, a pink-haired girl appeared next to him. He looked at the girl and quickly read that her name was Liu Xin and that she was from the Organic Synthesis Lab. Suddenly, she picked up her phone and greeted someone. At this moment, the guy's phone also vibrated. He answered the phone and asked if he was talking to Liu Xin from the Organic Synthesis Laboratory. The guy reported that his name was Li Wengxi and that he was a newcomer. The new Li Wengxi reported that Director Zhao asked him to come to her office, 401, Building B. He inquired if she was currently in the lab. After all, he was already standing downstairs waiting for her. The guy asked if he should go to her office. The girl turned around and looked at him. Thus she realized that the guy in front of her was the newcomer. She walked over to him and touched his shoulder. The girl noted with a smile that she was standing right behind him, and he hadn't even noticed her. The guy tried to express surprise, as if he hadn't seen her at all before and didn't know who she was. The girl used her electronic ID to open the door. Liu Xin cheerfully said to take him to Science Director Peng. The guy was also incredibly happy because now he would be able to learn more about genetics. And the problem of opening the door was solved so quickly. Upon reaching the director of Peng, the fake Li Wengxi got into an altercation with the doctors. It was surprising to some that human genes could be programmed and altered, and that it was actually controlled evolution. And also that everyone has their own evolutionary code. Someone thought such an idea was simply inhumane, and some thought it was a brilliant idea. 4 hours later, fake Li Wengxi was glad that he had gained knowledge from the country's top genetics and cell expert for a reason. With this knowledge, his medical skills and knowledge were greatly enhanced, so he was now ranked 4th in the world rankings. However, even with this knowledge, he didn't become the first, and there were 3 more people ahead of him. The guy was surprised, as he logically thought that he should be first in both Western and traditional Chinese medicine. Huang Zhe speculated that the 3 doctors above him in the rankings were clearly not ordinary people, but most likely had something to do with aliens. It was April 19th, and the veil of the mysterious personality in medicine began to be torn off. When many doctors gathered in one place, one of the doctors told another that he had recently met a graduate student and that he was incredibly fond of him. He even wanted to take him on as a student, but it turned out that the guy's identity was fake, and now he couldn't be found. The other doctor was surprised that he didn't have enough apprentices, and he had sent him one guy on recommendation last week. The first doctor couldn't understand when he had ever recommended any rookies to him in the first place. The second doctor was surprised that the old man had completely forgotten that he had recommended a person named Hua Shu to him. He even thought that Hua Shu was a promising guy, and so he recommended the guy to enter the doctoral program. Hearing their conversation, the other doctors were astonished. The old man was surprised because he thought the guy was a graduate student at Shanghai University. The second doctor thought it was nonsense. After all, he had seen the guy in the genetics lab with Peng, the director of research, a few days ago. The other thought the guy was obviously a high-ranking official in Beijing. As a result, the many doctors behind the 2 main doctors even started pulling each other by the collar. The second doctor tried to ask the old man if he thought Hua Zhu was the biggest liar. However, the old man didn't understand what the guy was trying to accomplish then. He noticed that the guy was not only insightful and erudite, but also inspired him with many research topics. The old man reported that he had already hired people to find the guy. He wasn't going to let such a talented guy waste his talent. However, the second doctor felt that given this guy's capricious nature, he didn't think such a plan would work. Looking at the guy's picture, the old man admitted that he had looked for information on the guy through internal access, but the guy was skittish as an eel and only his back could be seen. He also recommended the second doctor to check everything, because there might be some important documents missing after the guy left. The second doctor admitted that nothing was missing. The man didn't understand what there was to lose from a simple conversation. But the old man pointed out that geniuses might have their own strange ideas. Huang Ji also sneaked into this doctor's meeting without even bothering to change his clothes, although he did put a cap on his head so no one should ever recognize him now. He came to this place to get the medicine that Zhang Junwei couldn't get, and suddenly found that his identity had been revealed. The guy realized that sooner or later his identity would have been revealed, but luckily his goal had already been achieved, and it was time for him to leave the building. Leaving the building with the medicine, he almost collided with a man. The man sneezed sharply, and the guy dodged the man aside like a bullet. The man was slightly angry at the guy, noting that he only had a common cold, and the guy was suddenly so worried and acting like this. Looking carefully at the man, Huang Ji recognized some information about the man. The man in front of him was Tang Yan, a carrier of a particularly dangerous Class S, mutated virus. When he was young, he mistakenly thought that he had hit a man. Also, the man wanted to get rich. The guy knew that Class S was the highest threat category. It's the second threat-level virus in the Joint Medical Committee's global classification, so the guy couldn't get past this problem. He realized that it was urgent to take action, otherwise it would come out that the aliens would not even have time to do anything, and humanity would destroy itself. He grabbed the man's hand, asking Tang Yan to put a mask on his face. The man didn't realize what kind of guy was picking on him. He suddenly noticed that it was the same guy who had dodged him like a leper just now. Huang Ji confidently said that if a man wanted to get rich, he should put on the mask and follow him. At that, the guy held out money to him. Tang Yan was not happy with his offer, believing that the guy just wanted to cheat him. Therefore, he stated that the guy might think that he just gave him the money. Despite his earlier words, Tang Yan turned around to the guy leaving, wondering if he could actually get rich. He didn't understand at all how it was possible to get rich in broad daylight. Pulling his cap over his head, Huang Ji asked the man to follow him, but first they would need to go in and buy some disinfectant. Glancing at the guy again, he noticed that the probability of detecting the virus on the current route had become 0%. Looking at the back of the guy walking ahead of him, he found him somehow mysterious, completely unaware of what the guy was going to do. In the end, he convinced himself that wealth was not attained so easily and one had to take risks. When they stepped aside, Tang Yan tried to find out what way he could get rich. But Huang Ji said he would tell him how to get rich when Tang Yan got into the car, in a cab that was parked nearby. They ended up getting into the car, and Tang Yan once again demanded the guy's answers on how to get rich. Tang Yan seems like the kind of person who, if not for the virus, some serial killer would have buried somewhere. Or he would have lost his last pants because he would have been robbed. Maybe Tang Yan thinks he's about to be recruited into the Squid Game right now. In the end, the guy just handed him the money and told him to shut up. After that, he asked the cab driver to take them to the western outskirts of the city, to the Lingguan used car scrap market. Once the cab arrived at the designated place, they got out of the car. Tang Yan was still counting the money, noting that he was charging extra for working in such a place, but Huang Ji calmly assured him that there would be no problem with the money. At the car recycling market, Zhang Junwei and Xiao Jia were already waiting for them. Huang Ji asked them to stay away from them for now and to disinfect the place and put on masks. He then grabbed Tang Yan's hand, telling the others that Tang Yan had a contagious disease that was airborne and deliberately added that it was fatal. Huang Ji also told them to move the necessary equipment to a corner as he would set up his mini laboratory there. Tang Yan's gaze changed dramatically. Hearing the boss's words, Zhang Junwei and Xiao Jia instantly put on masks on their faces. Tang Yan kneeled down, assuring the guy that he just had a cold and that he had done nothing wrong to him. He felt that he didn't deserve to be treated there. Tang Yan seemed to think that he was about to have his internal organs seized for sale. Huang Ji assured him that if he helped him, he would get 10,000 a day. Tang Yan was still trying to convince him not to do anything bad to him. However, Huang Ji was already tired of his cries and simply kicked him, telling him to stop whining and get lost. Taking the money in his hands, Tang Yan announced that he would leave this place right now. Looking at the guy, Huang Ji smiled. He realized that viruses and cellular organisms had been fighting for billions of years, constantly evolving and changing to suit each other. And today, he had encountered this incredible exception to the exceptions. So the guy decided that the key to humanity's evolution might be in the man in front of him. It was like the discoverer was excited that maybe he would be the one to create this key to the evolution of mankind. No one should forget that this genius wears the same clothes everywhere. At most, in extreme cases, he puts on a cap and thinks that now no one will recognize him. And also in this world, people are allowed into closed objects without IDs, but just taking their word for it. Where such a strange way of the guy will lead, and where Zheng Xuan and Su Lingli went, because they should follow him. And that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you would like to see a sequel, please like, subscribe to the channel, and leave your wishes in the comments. You can also subscribe to Telegram to know about new videos. Bye everybody.